Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to me explaining the entire plot of the Twilight series, and we are on Eclipse today. It's been a long time coming, but buckle up because this is probably gonna be the bumpiest ride of either of our lives. This one is completely different than the movie, and also, my oh my, there are a lot of questionable things that happen in this book. And we're going to discuss it. We're going to do our due diligence and we're going to discuss it. If y'all enjoy this video, please make sure to hit the like button because it does really help me out and help my channel out. If you want to see more from me, make sure you're subscribed. And the next video that'll be coming to y'all in the Twilight universe is Bree Tanner's novella. So it is short, it is sweet, and then it'll kick us right into Breaking Dawn. And depending on how the Bree Tanner video goes, will kind of let me know if we're going to go straight from Breaking Dawn into Midnight Sun or if we're going to take a little break. Sound good? Sound good. Let's get into this thing. The book starts off with a poem, which is Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. And of course, we're going to be doing a dramatic reading, so get ready. I got my trusty old book here with us. Fire and Ice. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. Thank you, Robert Frost. Moving forward, as I said, the book and the movie drastically differ from one another, and in my opinion, I think this is the movie that is most different than any of the other books. The movie starts off with a scene with this man, Riley. Y'all won't even see or hear about him until literally the end of this book. I'm not even kidding you. And then we go into a scene where Edward and Bella, they're in the meadow doing their little thing. They're not in the meadow in the beginning of the book at all, and actually, they don't go to the meadow until the very end. So the beginning of this movie, just kind of throw to the back of your mind, we're not there. Anyways, we have a little snippet of a scene that's going to happen at the very end of the book, placed at the very start. So let's go over that first before we hop into chapter 1. Bella's POV, obviously, and she's thinking all of their sneaky plans did not work. She just watches as he prepares to defend her and try and save her when they're outnumbered. And his family wouldn't even be able to save them because his family was currently trying to save themselves. In the moment Bella believed to be her last, all of a sudden, a wolf howls in the distance. And now we are in chapter 1. The book starts off with a letter from Jacob. And this letter, you can tell, he had some rough drafts. And instead of, being like a normal person, maybe writing in pencil so he can erase that, or maybe just grabbing a different piece of paper and starting over, no. Anytime he wanted to start this letter over, he would just cross it out. Just cross out several lines. And then when he finally figured out what he wanted to say, he just mailed that one piece of paper. So Bella just sees it all. She sees his whole thought process. And that really cracks me up. I'm not gonna lie. So some of the lines that he crossed out were, I don't know why you're having Charlie hand me notes like we're in class. You made this choice and you can't have both. Imagine just lines being crossed through this, by the way, as I'm saying these. How is mortal enemies complicated for you? I'm a jerk, no way around it, and it's worse when I think of you. In Jacob's final draft of this letter, what he officially settled on was, yeah, I miss you, but it doesn't change anything. Sorry. This is the exact letter that we see in the movie, except it's not at the beginning of the film. We have a few more things to go through before you officially see it, but they did use his exact letter, which I really appreciated. Bella could picture him writing this letter. She could picture him being so frustrated over not knowing what to say, knowing what he should say versus what he wants to say. She can fully see him writing this thing. And honestly, if circumstances were different, she probably would have laughed at him. But every line that he struck out just reminds her how much he's hurting. And a lot of the hurt stems from her. Looks up from this note and she sees smoke coming out of the kitchen and she's like, what on earth is going on? Come to find, Charlie, who literally can't cook, is in the kitchen trying to make some dinner. And by cook, I just want it to be known that he put a jar of spaghetti sauce in the microwave with the lid on, and that's what's smoking. Yes. We learn when Charlie takes off his jacket that there have been these random disappearances in Seattle. And multiple disappearances, mind you, like plural. Make a mental note of that, please, and thank you. Now everyone, I want y'all to go back in time with me. I want y'all to go back in time to the very end of New Moon when we saw that Jacob tattletaled on Bella for her being on a motorcycle and for her owning a motorcycle. Cool, we back there? Awesome. Knowing that information, She is now grounded, and Edward can only come to see her between the times 7 to 9:30 p.m. And obviously he can still see her at school, but after school, they have an allotted time. And also, Charlie doesn't know that homeboy Edward is sneaking through Bella's window every night, because he is, but Charlie's not aware of that. So 7 to 9:30, Edward fakes going home. They spend the night together every night. Yes, she is grounded even though she's 18, and yes, she could move out, but she doesn't really want to ruffle any feathers with Charlie because eventually she's not going to be able to see him anymore. So why make a mess of the relationship that they currently have? Charlie currently has the news on and Forks is thriving, guys, but Seattle, it's not. And as I mentioned, there's some disappearances happening right now, but also let's add that there have been 5 unalivings in Seattle. Make another mental note, ladies and gents. After dinner, Bella is just chilling and she is reading her copy of Wuthering Heights. If y'all recall, Bella loves a classic. And while she is reading, Charlie sees this as his opportunity to be like, hey, can I talk to you about something for a second? He tells her that he is loosening the reins on her grounding under one condition. She needs to hang out with people other than Edward. Yes, she can still see Edward, but she has other friends, and so she shouldn't just be spending all her time with this one person. AKA, maybe you could go hang out with Jacob. What about Jacob? I will quickly learn that Charlie is Team Jacob till the end. He really loves Jacob. In fact, Charlie says, you really should hang out with Jacob. I mean, isn't Edward up for some healthy competition? There is no competition. Well, you're hurting Jacob's feelings by avoiding him, so can't you at least be friends? Charlie also says, you were so happy when you would hang out with Jacob. I'm happy now, she says through gritted teeth. I did not add that or exaggerate. It says that in the book. I'm happy now. And the way she says that literally makes the two of them laugh out loud like, whoa, girl, slow your roll. You seem so happy right now. So happy. Charlie just says, please just find some balance. That's all I'm asking for. And he stands up and then hands her a big envelope from the University of Alaska. Oh, correction. The University of Alaska Southeast. And obviously this is her acceptance letter. And Charlie is like, this is so exciting. I do wish you were going to go somewhere closer, but this is so, so exciting. And you know, I can help you with some of the tuition. And Bella's like, no. I have it all saved up. Don't worry. And she says this because she has no intention of going to any college or any university because she is going to be a vampire after graduation. At least that's what her and Carlisle decided on. Since they're on the discussion of college, Charlie very subtly is like, hey, so what's Edward's plans for next year? And Saved by the Bell, because as soon as Charlie asks that, there's a knock on the door and what would you know? It is actually 7 p.m. right now, which is the allotted time for Edward to come over. Bella reached for Edward's hand. She sighed because it almost flooded her with relief, as if she had been in pain and he relieved that. Now, I do want everyone to remember the last book where he just left her in the woods. And so she does have some PTSD from that, and we will continue on learning of this PTSD. But she does get a little antsy when Edward leaves her, and so she likes knowing that he's coming back and knowing that he is still here. Thus, why she sighed with relief. When Charlie approaches them, Edward is very civil, very kind, like, how are you doing, Chief Swan? And Charlie's just like, Like, he is not Team Edward at all. And rightfully so. If I were Bella's parent, I don't think I'd want Bella to be with Edward because he left her, made her be in a horribly scary, depressive state. And then all of a sudden she left for Italy and was gone for 3 days with no notice. And now he's back in town. And she's back in town and not talking to any of her other friends at all. If you look at it from that point of view, and the fact that Charlie doesn't know that the Cullens are supernatural, I do understand Charlie's hesitation with Edward. I get it. I hear you. Edward actually comes in with a stack of papers and he says, "Oh, Bella, these are more college applications. I know you missed the deadline, but I found some that either waive the deadline or at least make some kind of exception." And by exception, he means cash. They bribed the school with a lot of money for her to be able to apply. Because remember, Edward wants Bella to get the human experience and go to college and not be a vampire right off the bat. And Charlie's thinking to himself, "Oh, this is my moment. This is my moment." He brought up college. "Hey, Edward, where are you thinking about going next year?" Edward is like, "I don't know. I've been accepted to some schools, like there's Syracuse, Dartmouth, Harvard." And Charlie's like, "Harvard?" To which Edward is like, "Yeah, Harvard. Oh, and also the University of Alaska Southeast." "Oh, well, that's super. That's where Bella is probably going to end up going. But you know what? Wouldn't your father be a little disappointed if you turned down Harvard for the University of Alaska Southeast?" "No, I think my father would just want me to be happy and respect that decision." Charlie then lets them be, gives them some space, and Bella starts flipping through the applications and she sees one to Dartmouth and she's like, "Ain't no way. I'm never going to get in here, and two, I'm not applying to any of these." And he says, "Don't worry about the money. I will happily pay it and then you can just pay me back later." And again, Bella's like, "Ain't no way." Instead of pushing it any further, Edward just takes the applications, put them back into his jacket pocket and says, "That's fine. I actually signed your name better than you do. And I've already written your essays." Bella groans, saying, "Please don't start this. We've already discussed this several times. I won't be in any condition to start college in the fall." "Well, the timing is still undecided and I really think you need that human experience. There's no reason to rush. In fact," he says, "there's really no hurry. I won't let anything hurt you." I want to hurry. I want to be a monster. She actually says that, by the way. That's not me being silly. She does say that, and it's quite funny. Edward then says, "You don't know what you're talking about." And then he picks up the newspaper, flips to the Seattle headline with all the disappearances and whatnot. And Bella goes, "Oh my God, that's vampires?" This is someone new and they don't want to take responsibility for it. And Bella shakes her head saying, "Well, I won't be like that. If I start to get that way, me and you will go to Antarctica, so I won't hurt anyone but penguins." Great, penguins. "Okay, then Alaska. It's perfect." I guess that's better. The wolves there do get quite large. And this ticks Bella off and she's just like, "That's my best friend. That was literally my best friend. Let's not make wolfy jokes." Then immediately apologizes, saying, "Please forgive me. I shouldn't have even suggested or joked about that." And Bella's like, "No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have reacted in that way. It's just that Charlie was talking about how Jacob is so sad and it's all my fault. And all I want to do is go try and make it better." "Yeah, well, that is completely out of the question for you. You are not going to be around a werewolf by yourself. And I can't go with you because it would break the treaty and potentially start a war." This conversation was a little tension-filled, so they changed the subject and talked about Wuthering Heights, which was the book that Bella was reading. And Edward is like, "Oh, I hate that book. I hate that book. I hate that book." The only reason I am mentioning Wuthering Heights is because it is brought up a lot in this book. As in New Moon, Romeo and Juliet was the main theme. This one's Wuthering Heights. Bella explains to Edward the reason she likes this book is because nothing can keep them apart. Not her selfishness, not his evil, not even death. And their love is the only redeeming quality. Sound familiar? It does to me. Bella also says, which I find quite interesting, that Catherine, who is the main character in Wuthering Heights, is the source of all the trouble, not Heathcliff, which everyone would believe. This is paralleling into her own life where she believes she is the cause of everyone's issues. She knows that Edward is going to pick up on this, and so she changes the subject again and says that she needs to see Jacob, that it's not dangerous at all. Which is a lie, because as soon as she says it's not dangerous at all, she then remembers saw Paul not too long ago in his wolfy form when he was upset and mad, and she was fearful of this big gray wolf. And this little memory is making her heart rate just go through the roof, to the point where Edward knows that Bella is not telling the complete truth. But instead of calling her out on this, he simply says, "Werewolves are unstable. Sometimes people around them get hurt. And honestly, I know them better than you because I was here last time before Alice and Jasper were even with our family. Somehow Carlisle was able to make a treaty with Jacob's great-grandfather. Get a little bit more werewolf lore, if you will, because Edward says that the Cullens truly believed that this genetic mutation that led to the wolves becoming wolves died out when Jacob's great-great-grandfather passed away. Edward's back, and maybe it's just Bella's bad luck and her insatiable need to pull dangerous things around her. And somehow that was just strong enough to bring this pack back to life. And Bella is looking at him like, it's not me that caused this. I was told it's because your family returned. And when your family returned, the genetic marker lit up and the wolves started again. And Edward is like, Carlisle will be very interested in hearing that theory. Bella is growing more and more irritated with Edward over this whole conversation. And so she just goes, my friend is in pain. And if Jacob wouldn't have helped me when you left, I don't know what you would have come home to. Edward very quietly goes, I will never forgive myself for leaving you. Not even if I could live 100,000 years. And if I would have never left you, I wouldn't feel this need to go risk your life to comfort a dog. Please just make a conscious effort to stay safe, and I will do everything I can. But you gotta help me out a little. And Bella mutters, I'll work on it. Do you have any idea how important you are to me? Any concept of how much I love you, Edward tells her. Bella responds with, well, I know how much I love you. He laughs and he says, you compare one small tree to an entire forest. She nods and she says, I do have to see Jake. I'll have to stop you. Okay, we'll see about that. It is now a new day. We're at school. Bella is happy as can be because she is no longer grounded. There is an upcoming school dance, but we are not worrying about that one bit because she's not going. At lunch, Angela asks Bella if she sent out all her graduation invites, and Bella's like, well, I really didn't have a lot to give. Charlie knows that I'm graduating. Then we got Renee and Phil. Like, not a lot. And Angela's just like, you are so lucky. I feel like I have 1,000 of these to do, and I feel like they're never ending. I want to note that Alice is also at this table. In the movie, Jasper's there, but in the book, he's already graduated. Anywho, Alice is at this table, and she's like hardcore judging Bella's outfit to the point where Bella is uncomfy. Like, okay, all right. Like, literally is squirming in her seat because Alice is just judging her appearance right now. Back to our regularly scheduled program. As I said, Angela is having to make thousands of these invites, and Bella gets a little light bulb moment. It's like, oh, I'll help you. I will definitely help you. And she's not agreeing to do this so she can hang out with her friend Angela. No. She's doing this so that Charlie sees that she has balance in her life and that she doesn't just hang out with Edward. Alice overhears that Bella's no longer grounded, and Alice is like, oh my gosh, we need to celebrate. We need to go do something. And Bella's like, slow your roll. Please slow your roll. But just because Bella said this doesn't mean that they're gonna stop. So while all this planning is going on, Bella zones out, and while she's zoning out, all she can see is Jacob's face. Jacob's face in the very moment where she essentially broke his heart. That is what she's seeing over and over and over again, and all she can think about is not going out to celebrate that she's no longer grounded. It's that she wants to go see Jacob. And y'all, Bella isn't the only one daydreaming, because the thing that kicks Bella out of her daydream is Angela saying, Alice? Alice! Earth to Alice! Hello! Which means Alice is having a vision. And this one was really weird because it was almost as if Edward didn't want Bella to know what this vision was. As soon as lunch finished and they're about to walk to their next class, Edward makes sure that they're not alone at all so that she can't ask him about it. And then when that class ends, he goes up to Mike Newton. Yes. Mike. He goes up to Mike and he's like, hey, what's wrong with your vehicle? And Mike's like, well, I don't know. I think something's wrong with it. Yada, yada, yada. Edward's like, like, let me take a look. I can help you out. No big deal. And Mike is just like, yeah, maybe another time. And Edward's like, okay, cool, perfect. Well, I'm gonna leave. We're gonna go home. Bye, Mike. That's That's how I imagined it in my head, because they don't talk ever. Literally ever. And so Edward and Alice and Bella are making their way to the car, and Alice is like, what are you doing? You are not the mechanic of the family. I mean, I guess you'd have Rosalie go the night before so you look like you know what you're doing, but why are you trying to help out Mike? Okay, commentator note, this lunch scene that I just described is in the movie, but it's taken place where, one, as I said, Jasper is there, but also they're talking about how Jessica is going to have this epic valedictorian speech. Like, that is the main conversation going on. And Jessica's not even valedictorian. I'm convinced they made Jessica valedictorian in the movie because they wanted to give Anna Kendrick more screen time, which I'm not mad at. I thought she kind of crushed it. But I think in the book, Eric is valedictorian. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, guys. Anywho, Edward drops Alice at home, and then he goes with Bella, and him and Bella are kissing, kissing, kissing. And to Bella's surprise, Edward is the one encouraging and initiating everything, and Bella's like, oh my, oh my, oh my. Then the other side of Bella's mind is like, oh, he's encouraging this because he doesn't want to tell me the vision. He's avoiding the vision. Again, what could have possibly happened? After a bit, they do have to stop because Bella still gets really dizzy during these moments and can't catch her breath. And we're still not really discussing the vision, and so Bella goes to her email and she sees an email from Renee that really ticks her off. Like, very much ticks her off. And that's because Renee is doing all these things that are so out of her comfort zone, as in, I think, say like skydiving or something. She had like a parachute, and Renee is afraid of heights. That is like her number one fear. And Bella's like, why would Phil encourage this? He is not taking care of my mother the way she should be taken care of. I would take care of my mother better if I were there. I know my mother a whole lot better than Phil does. And she shakes her head just thinking, no, no, no. I have to let my mother go. I have to let my mother be my own person. This thought process is what leads Bella thinking about Renee's worst mistake or biggest regret. And that was getting married so young. So there was a reason for us having to read this email from Renee, because it did get Bella to start thinking about marriage again. I learned that the number one thing Renee drilled into Bella's mind is smart people take marriage seriously. And again, we're gonna talk about New Moon for a second, because please remember the end of that book. We see that a compromise from Edward was, if you want me to be the one to turn you into a vampire, you need to marry me. That is why marriage is fresh on the mind right now. As I also want to say that Charlie has kind of gotten to Renee a bit, because the end of Renee's email is asking about Jacob, and Bella literally knows it's because Charlie prompted this. Bella just responds with, he's fine, I don't see him much. And here, right here, is the correction from the last video, because someone, I don't know who and I don't know why, was just standing in this very spot and was like, yeah, when Edward left, he took the radio from her car. False, fake news. I don't know what happened to me when I was explaining that part to y'all guys. I may have just got too in the moment, but that is not true. It was Bella who took the radio out of the car. She basically clawed it out, clawed that thing out. And Edward now sees what kind of just looks like a lump of garbage, of metal garbage. And it's just staring at it like, Emmett and Rosalie aren't going to be really happy over this. This leads him into a new segue saying, speaking of these birthday gifts, the plane tickets that you were given, they're going to expire. That should be how we celebrate your freedom, by going to go see Renee in Jacksonville, Florida. And don't worry, Bella, because Charlie can't stop you from seeing Renee. Renee has primary custody over you. Bella says, nobody has custody over me. I'm 18. I'm an adult. Ah, you see exactly my point. Let's go this weekend. This weekend sounds great. And Bella shakes her head being like, no, not this weekend. I just got ungrounded. Oh, Mr. Gaslighter has returned. He is back in action, because he says, you weren't the only one trapped in here, Bella. Bella immediately knows that this is so sus, because Edward is normally very selfless. Very, very selfless, and he's really not backing down over this one for some reason. And because of this thought process, Bella not so subtly goes, what was the vision at lunch today? In a very composed, almost rehearsed manner, Edward says, she's been seeing Jasper in a strange place near his former family, and even though he doesn't want to go back, she's still a little worried. They go downstairs before Charlie is home, so Charlie doesn't know that Edward was in Bella's room. Charlie informs Bella that they are both invited to Billy and Jacob's house because there's a playoff game this weekend. Emphasis on this weekend. Emphasis. And Bella's currently doing the dishes and she's about to respond until this paranormal man says, Charlie, did Bella ever tell you about the tickets my parents got her to go see Renee? Bella literally drops the plate into the sink because that is not what they discussed at all. He has now taken the wheel and taken matters into his own hands. You know what? Edward does not let Bella drop in the plate deter him because he keeps going. He just keeps going. Edward says these tickets are about to expire and I think Esme would be really hurt if Bella didn't use them. And Charlie nods and goes, you know what? You are so right. It is actually a really good time for Bella to go see her mom. There's a pause. And then Charlie goes, wait, you said they're about to expire. How many tickets are there? One for me and one for Bella. Again, Bella is pissed in the background. And so is Charlie. So is Charlie. They are both angry right now. Charlie gets up out of his seat and he shouts, nope, nope, not gonna happen. You are not going anywhere with him, young lady. He is pointing his finger at her like this. So essentially that line would have been, you are not going anywhere with him, young lady. Just like that. It's very heated, very, very heated right now. And Charlie's reaction to this is setting Bella off. And Bella's like, I'm an adult, try and stop me. Charlie says, well, you know what? You're grounded again. Welcome to being grounded. My house, my rules. And Bella says, fine, if that's what you want. What time would you like me out of this house? I can have it moved out tonight, but if you would be so gracious, I'll do it tomorrow. Because Dad, you know as well as I do that if this trip was me going with Alice or Angela, you would be completely fine with it. Charlie says, well, of course, they're girls. Bella then retorts back and says, and if I were going with Jacob? Charlie says, well, that would bother me too. Which Bella says, you are lying to me right now. I'm not going to Vegas or anything like that. I'm literally going to see my mother. And she finally says, I finished my homework. The kitchen is clean. I'm going out. Edward asks very quietly but enthusiastically to Bella, we're going out? Yeah, we are, and I want to speak to you alone. None of that happened in the movie. Where was that? That was the most intense scene, and also, I loved it. I was living for the drama. In the car, we have some more gaslighting going on. From who, you might ask? Our number one gaslighter, Mr. Edward Cullen himself. Edward says, I know you want to see your mom. You've been saying her name over and over again in your sleep. And also, I knew you were too much of a coward to bring it up to Charlie. Yeah, because I told you I didn't want to fight with him. Well, Bella, no one said you had to fight. That's not my fault. Bella looks at him and goes, does this urge to go to Florida have something to do with Billy's party? Not at all, Bella, because even if you were on the other side of the world for that party, you wouldn't be going to it. And Bella thinks to herself, this is exactly how it was with Charlie. She is being treated as if she's a misbehaving child. Edward changes the conversation. He's like, okay, we're already out. What do you want to do tonight? And Bella just shrugs and goes, I want to go to your house. I haven't seen Esme in a while. Let's go see Esme. And that's what they do. We don't really get to see that scene at all because we flip immediately back to her house. And when they get home, Bella is shocked to see that Charlie is still awake. Edward tells Bella that he will be back when Charlie goes to sleep. And Charlie makes some small talk until Charlie finally says, you and Edward seem serious, but you're still so young. And there are some important things we need to talk about when you get physically involved with someone. AKA, when two people love each other very much. We're having a very, very awkward coach car talk. A little education. And Bella literally is like, la 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 la, stop, stop, stop. I already know about the birds and the bees. I've heard it from Renee. She beat you to the punch. No more. But Charlie keeps going. He's like, for peace of mind, just tell me you're being responsible. It's not like that. Edward is very, very old-fashioned. It's not like that. And Charlie pushes it a bit more, and so to shut him up, Bella literally is like, I'm a virgin. All clear, all good, don't need this talk, good night. Before Bella can completely make her getaway from this awkward conversation, Charlie goes, how's the balancing going? You being able to balance everything? And Bella says, actually, yeah, I have plans with Angela soon. Charlie responds with, oh, great, yeah, that's awesome. What about Jake? I know you'll do the right thing, honey. You're such a good person. I really feel like Bella gets emotionally manipulated a whole lot in this book. There's a lot on her emotions. But that's all right, because after he says that, she's able to make her escape upstairs. And she knows that Edward's going to be a little bit. And so she's like, oh my gosh, I can go see Jacob right now. And Edward would never know. So she races to her truck. And while she's running, she is peering over her shoulders to make sure that no one is following her. She gets her keys in the ignition and it's not working. It's not starting. And then she sees him in her peripheral vision. Edward. Edward says, Alice called. Apparently she got anxious when all of a sudden she could no longer see you in her visions. And just remember, everybody, Alice can see visions of everything except werewolves. So anytime a werewolf is near, it can kind of skew the vision a bit or take people out of it. And Carlisle has a theory as to why this can happen. His theory is that werewolves are ruled by their transformation, and their transformation isn't a decision, it's a reaction. And this makes everything so unpredictable. In the moment that they change from one form to another, they actually don't exist. So that is why they're a little bit of a blind spot in Alice's powers. Back to the present moment, Edward tells Bella, hey, I'll put your truck back together tomorrow. Don't worry about it. And also, if you don't want to see me for the rest of the night, just close your window and I won't come in. Bella is furious with Edward right now, and she literally stomps back into the house. She passes Charlie again, and Charlie watched her head out super excited, and he knew. He was like, oh, she's gonna go see Jacob. And so Charlie's like, what happened? Bella explains, and he's like, well, do you want to use my car? And Bella's just like, nope. Good night. I'm over it. And as soon as she gets upstairs, she slams her window shut, and then she takes a second and she's like, you know what? No, let's open it back up. And in fact, she opened it as wide as it could possibly go. Guys, we have a time jump. We are now back from Florida. So the weekend has passed. We have gone to Florida. We've hung out with Renee, and now we're back in Forks. And this is a decision that I preferred in the movie. I liked that we got to see Bella and Edward in Florida in real time. I enjoyed that. And also Renee gave Bella this gift of, I think it was like a t-shirt quilt or something like that. And I adored it. I adored the t-shirt quilt. It was just so wholesome and so sweet. And that does not happen in the book. So that was a nice addition in my personal professional opinion. Edward tells Bella that Renee has a very interesting mind. It's almost childlike, but very insightful, and Renee sees things differently than most people do. Bella is now thinking about a conversation she had with her mom when her and her mom went on a walk, and Edward was stuck inside because it's sunny, but he just said he had a term paper to write. Renee on this walk told Bella that she's concerned about her and Edward because they're so intense, and she didn't realize how serious that they were. Like, he watches you as if he is ready to take a bullet for you in a heartbeat. And it almost feels like there's a secret aspect of your relationship that I'm just kept out of. Like, I feel like I'm missing a piece. Honestly, it's not just him. You move differently too. Like, when he moves, you move. Kind of like a satellite. Anywho, Bella is back in the present. She is done reflecting on the past, and we are in Forks. Charlie is waiting in the living room. He is ecstatic to see Bella, and he's like, before you start unpacking, before you start dinner, Jacob called, and you really need to call him back because I told him that you would call him. He misses you. And exactly in that moment is when the phone rings again, and so she picks up. Obviously, it's Jacob. Jacob says, you're back? To which Bella responds with, yeah? But as she says this, she has this weird feeling of homesickness inside of her, wanting the person that sheltered her from everything to come back. Anywho, the next person to speak is Jacob. And Jacob says, are you going to school tomorrow? Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I? Jacob, what do you want? What is the point of this conversation? He responds with, nothing. Nothing at all. Okay. What do you want to talk about? And then he abruptly says, I have to go. I'll talk to you soon. He then hangs up the phone before Bella can even argue with him. And Edward is looking at Bella like, you good? You okay? Bella, very frustrated, is like, I just wish I knew what that was about. And Edward says, your guess is probably better than mine. And then it clicks in Bella's mind. Bella's theory is, oh my gosh, I went out of town with you. I went on a trip with you, and he is now checking to see if I'm still me, if I'm still human. This is also the moment that Bella realizes that as soon as she makes that transformation, they can never come back to Forks because that would be them breaking the treaty. All right, next day on the way to school, this does happen in the movie. It's flip-flopped. This movie's all over the place. But the majority of the scene does happen in the movie. To some extent, of course. Edward says, if I asked you to do something, would you trust me? Bella's like, depends. I was afraid you would say that. I want you to stay in the car. Please just stay in the car. And Bella doesn't even have to question it because she sees him. She sees Jacob standing by his motorcycle in the school parking lot. Edward then tells Bella, you assumed wrong last night. The reason he asked you if you were going to be at school wasn't to see if you're a vampire, it's because he knew I would be with you. He wants to talk to me. In fact, he wants to talk to me in a place where there are witnesses. Bella is sitting there being like, I feel like I am always missing some kind of information. I feel like I'm always left out in the dark because this makes no sense. Because she's feeling this way, she looks at Edward and she's like, yeah, no, I'm not staying in the car. And y'all, Jacob wanted witnesses, and that's exactly what he's getting because every single student in Forks High School is just staring at Jacob like, what is happening? And I also just want you to remember that Jacob doesn't look like a 16-year-old. He looks like a 25-year-old man who's like 6'7". Edward says, I already know what you came to say. Consider us warned. Warned? Warned about what? Jacob goes, oh, I see that you didn't tell her. Were you afraid that she would side with us? Edward goes, drop it. Bella's like, wait, what don't I know? Jacob says, oh, he didn't tell you that his big brother crossed over into our territory and tried to start a fight with Paul? And Bella's just thinking to herself, Paul? Oh my gosh, wait, I hope Paul is okay. She's not even thinking about Emmett because she knows in a fight, Emmett's always going to end up winning. And Edward can literally feel Bella's anxiety, so he leans in and he whispers, everyone's okay, we're okay, everything is completely fine, nobody got hurt. Jacob says, oh, so you didn't tell her anything, that's why you took her out of town then. There's a long moment of silence and then it all clicks for Bella. This is all connected. Everything is connected and it's connected to Victoria. And that was the vision Alice had that Edward wouldn't tell her. It was all about Victoria. Edward shrugs his shoulders and says, why would I worry her about something when she's not in danger? Why would I put her through that? Jacob says, better scared than lied to. And mind you, Bella is actively freaking out right now. There are literal tears in her eyes. Jacob says, she's tougher than you think she is and she's been through worse so she could handle it. And when he says this, Edward's face cringes and it reminds Bella of the time when Jane did her pain on Edward. That is what she sees in Edward's face currently. And Bella's like, what is going on? Edward keeps wincing and he's like, it's fine, Jake just has a really good memory. And so now Bella is screaming at Jake like, stop, please, just stop. Jake says, sure, but it's his own fault if he doesn't like the things I remember. Edward then says, well, the principal's coming, so if we don't want to be involved, we need to leave right now. We also learned that Jacob never sold Bella's motorcycle, even though Charlie told him to after he tattletaled on Bella. So then he's like, come over anytime, we can ride motorcycles. And on top of that, he says, I actually was wrong. I think we can be friends, so come see me. And Edward has now wrapped his arms around Bella, and so Bella's like, I don't know. Jacob says, I miss you all the time. Which Bella responds with, I'm sorry. Yeah, that doesn't matter, right? Bella is wanting so badly to reach out and hug Jacob. Her body is like literally going in that direction, but she's being held back by Edward and her arms are being pinned down to her side as well. The principal has finally arrived to the scene. He looks at Edward and he's like, do we have a problem here? And Edward's like, nope, going to class. Well, I don't recognize your friend. Edward says, well, he's no friend of mine. And then they head to English. In the movie, this is the part where Bella hops on Jacob's motorcycle and they ride off in the distance. That has not happened in the book yet. In fact, she just goes to class. That's what they do instead. Just walk to English. Bella and Edward are passing notes back and forth and she asks him again about the vision. And finally, Edward tells the truth. No gaslighting for once. Might I add that it's written in perfect penmanship. It is beautiful. They changed the font in the book and everything. Edward says that Alice did have a vision of Victoria, that Victoria was coming to Forks and he took Bella away as a precaution. Emmett and Jasper actually almost got a hold of Victoria, except she crossed over the territory line, and when Emmett tried to catch her since it was over the territory, a bit of an incident with the wolves. I don't have Paul pictured, but imagine Paul like right up in here. That's who Emmett was dealing with. When they were dealing with this, the person who was really ticked off was Rosalie. Like, leave Emmett alone. What are you doing? Don't mess with my man. And Carlisle had to be the one to like step in and be like, hey, this is a big misunderstanding. This is exactly what's going down. We don't mean y'all any harm. We're after redhead girl. And it was not just Carlisle calming everyone down. He also used Jasper, because if y'all remember Jasper's powers, he can feel emotions, but also control them to some extent. And I was about to get ahead of myself, but actually we'll talk about how Jacob felt over that in a hot second. And Bella responds to his note saying, well, what about Charlie? We left Charlie alone. And Edward says, well, I wasn't gonna let you go on a plane by yourself, no way. And Bella is shook by this response because never in a million years did she even consider that Edward wouldn't go with her. She just assumed like maybe they put someone on guard at Charlie's house, not that Edward could have stayed back. That was never a possibility for her. Bella is now being a little silly, and so she's like, okay, so it's my bad luck. What if the plane went down? What if the plane was crashing? How would you have saved me? Edward says, well, why is the plane crashing? The pilot passed out. Edward replies with, well, I would just fly the plane. Bella says, the engines have exploded. Edward says, well, then I would wait until we were close enough to the ground where I'd feel comfortable jumping out of the plane with you on me, and then eventually I would sprint back to the plane and we would just be the two very, very lucky survivors. You would still be fine. I was reading this, it's just like, what? But instead she replies with, you will tell me next time. You won't leave me in the dark. Nods this, and this very moment is when the teacher comes over and they're like, Mr. Cullen, what are you working on over here? And Edward is very sneaky, and also he knew this was coming because he can read everyone's thoughts. And so he's like, oh, my notes? Yeah, these are my notes. You want to look at them? And of course, they were well-written notes. Now for calculus, not a lot happens in calculus, except everyone is talking about Jacob. Even the people that don't know him are talking about him. The people that don't know him are being a little questionable in the way that they talk about him. But also, we'll get to the problematic elements of this book a little later. But the main reason that they're talking about Jacob is they're taking bets. They're like, Jacob, Edward, Jacob, Edward. And Mike's like, my money's on Jacob. Anywho, Bella's having a bad week, guys. And rightfully so, because all she can think about is Victoria. Bella's mind, it's too dangerous for her to be a human. The Volturi demand her to be a vampire, and Victoria would probably stop chasing her if she was a vampire. And Carlisle is trying to calm her down like, it's one vampire against 7 of us. You're good. You're good. And Emmett says, I'm so happy Edward didn't kill you because everything is so much more exciting now. It is mentioned that Jasper has used his powers a little bit to calm Bella's nerves, and so she is feeling a bit more at peace. And when she finally brings up these concerns to Edward about her staying human with Victoria around, Edward's like, honestly, I don't want to hear it. Take it up with Carlisle. We had our deal. You did not accept my terms and conditions. Carlisle is the one in charge of your transformation, not me. Unless, of course, you're wanting to bring that discussion back up and we can go over the terms again. I'm fine with that. And of course, Bella's like, no. Bella is literally thinking to herself, sometimes I do think he can read my mind, because how on earth was he able to pick the one thing that I would say no to? And as I said, this was a bad week for Bella, but a bad day in particular because Edward had to go hunting. He did. As I mentioned earlier, she has PTSD from the last time Edward left her, and she would never bring up any of these thoughts to Edward because she wouldn't want him to feel guilty. But she's freaking out that he's gone. Edward, who does know Bella very, very well, has a hunch of this, and so he does leave her a note being like, I will be back soon. Look after my heart. It's with you. And then Alice reaches out later and is like, I'm like 15 minutes away if you need anything from me. But basically, Alice saying this is her way of being like, no funny business. Don't try anything crazy with Edward gone, because we will still know. Bella is eating breakfast and she is distracted by these 2 magnets on the refrigerator, because these 2 magnets can hold so much paper without snapping. But they really don't want to work together, and so like if she puts them together, they're not going to do their thing because they're polar opposites. They won't stick. And she's literally a crazy person standing by the fridge with these magnets trying to shove them together and get them to work. And she's trying to do this until she can force them to coexist together. Pay attention to that wording. She is trying to force these 2 polar opposite things together so they can coexist at the same time. Which is such a weird scene to include, right? Like, super weird. Like, what could be the importance of this? Like, do you think it's representing a certain set of characters? Maybe. But don't you fret, we will come back to this moment, but it will be in probably about 500 pages or so. Bella goes to work. She hears Mike and Mike's mom arguing, and she got to work a little early, and Mike's mom sees Bella, and she's like, oh, you know what, you actually don't have to work today. I don't know if we can keep you on payroll, yada, yada, yada. And the reason that she said this is because Bella has gone up to the Newtons and is like, I'm leaving for college soon. I don't know how long I'm actually going to be able to work. And so they hired someone else. They hired a new girl. Her name is Katie, and I believe it's the same Katie that is dating Eric. Fun little fact. Since they hired Katie, they don't have the funds to pay for Bella. And Mike is like, this is super awkward. Just let Bella work the hours that she wants to work. And Bella's like, no, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Mike's mom's like, see, I knew it would be perfectly fine. Bella understands. Actually, Bella, on your way out, can you throw these in the dumpster? Thank you. Thank you. That is insane. That is actually insane. But okay. And what she's throwing away are these flyers, and it says, save the Olympic wolf. This sent Bella running to her truck, wanting to go to La Push, and she's like, oh my gosh, wait. This is a spur of the moment decision. There is no way that Alice will be able to see this happening. Bella technically doesn't know where the boundary for the treaty line is, but as soon as she crosses over to the boundary, she just instantly feels better and instantly feels safe. And of course, Bella is going to go see Jacob, and Jacob is ecstatic, jumping off the walls like, holy heck, you came to see me. And so Bella and Jacob go on a walk because they're too jazzed to sit down. They can't be doing anything else. So they're just walking and they're talking, doing their little thing. And Jacob just loves to stir the pot. And so he asks, like, did you forgive him for everything? Bella responds with nothing to forgive. Jacob says, I wish Sam would have taken a picture of you in the woods and used it as Exhibit A. Well, that's just silly because we're not on trial. Edward left because he didn't think that I should be around vampires. It's healthier. That's why he left me. Well, then he should have stayed away. Jacob, I went to get him and you know that. You literally watched me leave. Jacob then says, tell me the story of what happened when you were there. Or are you not allowed to? Bella's just like, well, I'm allowed to, but it's a really long story. And so Bella's starting from the beginning, but she does let it slip that Alice can't see the wolves at all. And Jacob's like very happy over this news, which means everyone's gonna be very happy over this news. Bella changes the subject and is like, okay, tell me what I missed when I was in Florida. What happened? I need to hear your side. So here's the gist. Jacob and his two best friends, Quill and Embry, they were on patrol for the night. And then all of a sudden there was a fresh trail. And since Jake didn't know that Bella was out of town, he just started sprinting. But Victoria crossed the line. When she did that, Emmett lunged for her, landed behind her, and almost rammed into Paul, who's not pictured. Non-pictured Paul. And obviously Paul overreacted because that's kind of what Paul does best, if we remember from the last book. But apparently the blonde also overreacted, the blonde being Rosalie, which that adds up as well. And Jacob says, but it was so weird because everything was so heated and then all of a sudden, it was like this forced calm came upon all of us. And everyone just agreed that Victoria was the priority. The big one and the leader wanted permission to be able to come on our side, but obviously we said no. And Bella says, Edward told me the same story, he just left out a few details. Jacob goes back to the earlier discussion and says, the fortune teller saw you jump, but she didn't see me, because she can't see me. If you would have just waited for me to go cliff diving like you were supposed to, they wouldn't be back. Bella says Edward would have come back anyway. He was already a few weeks out from just coming back. He also wasn't okay. And Jacob says, well, Sam is mad at you because you were the one other person who should hate the Cullens as much as us. And now you like them again. It's like a betrayal. Bella says, I love him, not because he's rich, not because he's beautiful, but because I'm in love with him for who he is. But please enlighten me. What is a valid reason for me to love someone? It's best to look at your own species. And Bella says, well, dang, I guess I should have ended up with Mike then. And Jacob's like, you could have ended up with me. Bro, you're not human. You turn into a wolf. Jacob says, well, I didn't choose this. To which Bella argues, do you think they did? He picks up Bella's hand and he brings it to his heart. And she says, well, normal humans can't throw motorcycles around like you do. Jacob says, normal humans run from monsters. I'm not normal, but I am human. Well, you do look human to me at the moment. She can tell that Jake is in a lot of pain and that's causing her pain because she cares about him and she doesn't want to be the thing that's hurting him so bad. And over the course of time in New Moon, he became a part of her and she really doesn't think that there's anything that can change that or get rid of it. And so she's really struggling right now. Bella starts babbling a little bit. So she's like, how are Sam and Emily? What about Quill and Embry? How are they doing? When she says this, Jake takes a really deep breath and she immediately knows, yep, Quill is officially a wolf. But Jacob says that Quill actually thinks it's the coolest thing to ever happen. He's not upset with it one bit. And we learned that Jacob is kind of the outlier of the werewolves because he's the only one that truly resents it. Everyone else really likes it. Sam used to be like that, and then he changed a bit. And now we get to hear the story of Sam. So here's Sam. Let's get his story. As we already know, Sam had to do the transition alone. First time he changed, he actually thought he lost his mind. He was dating Leah at the time, and he just ran away. Literally, the Clearwaters were looking everywhere for him, and he could not be found. Sam and Leah were high school sweethearts, head over heels in love with each other, and everyone thought that they were going to get married. And Bella is shook over this because she's seen Sam and Emily interact together, and you would never think that there was someone else. In fact, she compares the dynamic between Sam and Emily to her and Edward, so she's like, well, what happened? What on earth could have happened? But you know what? Slow your roll, Bella, because we will get there. Sam eventually did come back, but he wouldn't tell anybody where he went or what happened. Bill's grandfather went to Sam, and the only people left who have ever seen this transition would be Quill's grandfather, Billy, and Harry. And they only remember not because they were also werewolves, but because they had watched someone else do it. So Quill's grandfather would have seen his father transition, and then Billy and Harry would have seen their grandfather's transition. And Sam just had to wait to see if this would potentially happen to others, / they were of age, so until then he was just alone. Jacob literally blames the Cullens for everything. Clear disdain, cannot stand them, and Bella's just like, can you grow up, please? Like, just grow up. It's also where we learn that Jacob doesn't age, and so now Bella's like, am I the only one that's going to get old? And Jacob explains that one day he will get older, but it's completely up to him. Because when wolves get to a certain age and they are able to control when they transform, that is when they are finally able to be like, I'm done, I'm out. Put it in perspective, Sam is not even at that level of control yet. They reach full maturity a few months after the gene is triggered, and so Jacob's about 25. Even though he's 16, physically he's 25, which makes a whole lot more sense. Sam wasn't allowed to tell Leah anything when they were dating. Also, he wasn't allowed to be around her, just like how Jacob wasn't allowed to be by Bella. But just like Jacob, Sam broke the rules. And Leah was so mad at him for not telling her, but they were working out their problems. They were still in love. Everything was still going well. They were fixing things. Until one day when Leah's cousin, Emily, came to town. You heard that right, folks. Emily is Leah's cousin. Second cousin, but they were close. They were basically sisters. This is where we get into the discussion of imprinting, because we learn that Sam immediately imprinted on Emily. As soon as he set eyes on her, he imprinted. Imprinting doesn't happen with everyone. It is a rare exception, not a rule. And even though Sam loved Leah, like truly, truly loved her, there's nothing that could have been done to stop the imprinting from happening. Imprinting is more powerful than love at first sight. Make a mental note of this, because imprinting will definitely come back up, especially in the next book when we get to Rigatoni or whatever her name is. Now, Emily was very mad in the beginning because she was like, you literally were with my cousin. You were dating my cousin and in love with her. Like, you were the love of her life. But Jacob says it's really hard to ignore that level of commitment that someone that is imprinted on you is giving you. So all the attention and love that Sam was giving Emily, it's hard to ignore that. Also, Sam was able to tell Emily everything. And that's because once you're bound to your mate, there are no secrets and there are really no rules. And that's kind of how Emily ended up getting hurt, because she was the one comforting Sam, and he lost his temper a bit because he's really upset and he resented being a werewolf, and that's when the scratch happened. Also, I just want to add that Leah was a bridesmaid in Emily and Sam's wedding. So there's that. There's that. Jacob says that the imprinting hasn't happened to him, but it has happened to Sam and Jared. Jared's also not pictured. Sorry, Jared. Jared's imprinting was not traumatic. It literally was a girl that he would sit by in class, never paid attention to her at all, and then one day he saw her and his world flipped upside down. The funny thing is, though, is that this girl actually had a crush on Jared. She'd go through her notebooks and she would literally write her name and then Jared's last name all over it. This was such a win for her. Such a win. And now to answer your question, Sam and Jared aren't just going around spilling secrets, spilling the tea on everything that's happened. There are no secrets and no privacy when you are a werewolf. So anything you think, anything you're feeling, it's felt by others. Jacob's like, well, you get the no privacy thing, right? And Bella's like, no, Edward can't read my thoughts. And Bella was like, what were you thinking on Monday when Edward was so bothered? What was it? And Jacob says, oh, I was thinking of you, remembering when you were found in the woods. Jacob has seen this exact image because Sam is who found her. And so he's seen it through Sam's memories. And Bella is pissed that that's what Jacob did. And so Bella's like, you know what? I'm going to go to Angela's. I'm going to be late anyway. I got to go do some graduation invitations. Bye. And before she officially leaves, she says, 1, that she will see him next time Edward is gone. And then 2, I don't care who's a vampire. I don't care who's a werewolf. You're Jacob, he's Edward, I'm Bella, and that's all that matters. But I'm a werewolf and he's a vampire. And Bella screams, well, I'm a Virgo. And then they both laugh and say that they've missed each other and that they will see each other next time. And so Bella is now on her way to Angela's house. Bella is driving, she's already feeling 1,000,000 times better until, you know, in her rearview mirror, she sees a shiny silver Volvo behind her. And Bella's just thinking to herself, ain't no way I'm pulling over. And she drove like that until she got to Angela's house and got out of her car. The shiny silver Volvo just drove past. It didn't stop. Just kept going. And Bella refused to look up because she didn't want to see the look on his face. Ben is who answers the door. He's dating Angela. In the movie, Angela's dating Eric. Because I don't think Ben exists. He's like, thank God you're here, Bella. I can't take this anymore. I can't. And then he leaves. I think he goes to a movie. They're working on the invites. They're making small talk. Angela's like, are you okay? You seem a little anxious. I was like, yeah, it's fine. It's Edward and it's Jacob. Oh, okay, so he's jealous. I mean, I've seen how Jacob's looked at you. I know Edward's seen it too. And Edward's only human. He's gonna be just like any other guy. Write all the invites, they talk about their college plans. Bella heads home and behind her there's no silver shiny Volvo. He's like, I'm so happy you hung out with people today, yay! Bella goes upstairs and guess who is there? Take your guess. You got it? Edward. And he's just glaring at her. Just glaring. And she just says, so, I'm alive. Edward goes, do you know how close I was to breaking the treaty today? And Bella goes, you can't, they would love that. And Edward says, maybe they aren't the only one who would love a fight, especially if he hurt you. Bella says, well, Jacob isn't dangerous. Edward says, are you the best judge of what's dangerous? And instead of fighting and answering, she goes up, she hugs him, and she goes, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry if I made you anxious today. Edward explains that Alice saw her disappear, and they put 2 and 2 together, and he immediately came back home. And Edward's like, so this isn't gonna happen again. And Bella's like, yeah, it's not gonna happen again because you're not gonna overreact. And Edward goes, no, it's not gonna happen again because you're never doing it again. You're never going to go back there. And Bella, thinking of her conversation with Angela, is like, is this really about my safety or are you just jealous? You know better to be jealous, right? And Edward just questions, do I? And Bella says, well, when it comes to this enemies nonsense, I'm Switzerland. Jacob's family and you're not exactly the love of my life, but the love of my existence. He tells her that she smells like a dog and they move forward with their life. You know, Edward ended his hunting trip early, so he's gonna have to go back to go get food. Since he doesn't want Bella to go see the wolves again, he's arranged her to have a slumber party with Alice. Alice says, there's nothing I can do. He paid me off. He's given me that yellow car from Italy, so you're on your own. I really want that car. The slumber party consisted of Alice, Rosalie, Esme, and of course Bella. She makes Alice give her her phone so that she can call Jacob and let him know that she's not ghosting him, that she's at this slumber party against her will. And he's like, do you want us to come get you? We will come get you. And she's like, no, like their hearts are in the right place. Before she hands the phone back to Alice, she tries to call Edward 4 times, but it goes directly to voicemail because he is actively hunting. But she does leave a message saying, you are in big trouble when you get back. Alice follows Bella upstairs and Bella's like, I'm not gonna escape, it's completely fine. And Alice is just like, well, I wanna show you where you're gonna be sleeping. And Bella's like, isn't it just Edward's room? Am I sleeping on a couch? Like, what do you mean? And Alice opens the door to Edward's room and inside, there is now a huge bed. This was not there last time. Edward put this here for Bella. And by huge, I mean huge. Alice leaves, shuts the door behind her, and then we hear a knock. Now, do y'all have any guesses on who this person could be? It is Rosalie. And we are about to learn Rosalie's story. Rosalie comes in the room and she says, he rarely leaves you alone and I thought I should take advantage of this opportunity. And please don't think I'm interfering, but I did want to say my opinion on why I think you should stay human. Bella says, Edward told me what happened to you is similar to what could have happened to me in Port Angela. Rosalie says, that's all he told you? Well, then would you like to hear my story? Okay, Serious commentator note, no silly funny business. Serious, okay? Cool. I am going to put a little timestamp here because her story does deal with SA, and I know that that can be very triggering, and I don't want anyone to have to sit through this because even if you've seen it in the movie, it's a little more than the movie, TBH. Here's the timestamp. Do whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. Back to the story. Guys, I just took a little break and I went in the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I didn't rub in my dry shampoo. That means all of what I just filmed there was just dry shampoo. So in that footage, the roots are gonna be going hard and I love that. Love that so much. Anyway, let's get back to our regularly scheduled program and let's learn a bit about Rosalie. It was 1933, we were in Rochester, New York, and Rosalie was 18 years old. And let me just tell you, her life was perfect. And yes, this was during the Great Depression, but Rosalie explained that she really thought that was a rumor because her family never had any financial struggles. Rosalie had 2 younger brothers, but she was obviously the favorite. And even though her family was well off, they still wanted more. They wanted to be able to climb the social ladder, and Rosalie was the key. And honestly, this worked out for Rosalie because all Rosalie wanted was to be loved and adored. She wanted to get married and have a wedding with tons and tons of flowers, have her father walk her down the aisle. And she wanted a big house with a porch that had a swing on it. Rosalie's best friend Vera actually got married at 17 to a carpenter. Rosalie knew that this was something her parents would never have wanted for her because in this time period, a carpenter would be pretty low on the social ladder. Friend Vera had a son with curly hair and dimples. This was the first time in Rosalie's life that she was jealous of something. Rosalie wanted a baby, a house, a husband who would get home from work and kiss her immediately. Royce King was also in Rochester and he owned the bank that Rosalie's father worked at. Royce King had a son, Royce King II, and this was the man that Rosalie's parents was like, oh, maybe we should set the 2 of them up. Literally got to the point where Rosalie's mom would be like, oh my goodness, Rose, your father forgot his lunch. Please go bring his lunch to the bank. Please, 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 go do that for us. And they never really hung out alone. Every single time they hung out together, he made sure that there were lots of people around. Almost like he was showing her off. And quickly they were engaged and they were happy. One night Rosalie went to go see her friend Vera, and Vera's son is named Henry, by the way, so she also went to go see the baby. And right as Rosalie was about to leave, Vera's husband kissed Vera, and Rosalie noticed that he did it when he thought no one was watching, and this made Rosalie reflect back and be like, Royce has never done that to me. Royce always makes sure that we have a crowd whenever anything happens. So on the same night that Rosalie went to go visit Vera, and Rosalie tells Bella that she remembers every single detail of this night. It was a dark, cold April night. Her wedding was literally a week away, and then she heard Royce call Rose's name, and he was not alone. And let me just tell you that these men had had a really, really good night, and they were not fully there. And as we've learned about Royce, he loves showing Rose off, and so that's what he was doing to his friends. But Royce's friends weren't really impressed by how modest Rosalie was, especially in her appearances. That is really where I'm going to stop with the details on this scene. You can kind of assume and infer where this is going, and it just escalates from there. And they leave her in the street thinking she was dead. And honestly, she wished that she was. Carlisle was the one who found her, and Rosalie remembers how irritated she had been at the Cullens because they were drop dead gorgeous and beautiful and stunning, and they hated the attention. Oh, and side note, Edward's part in the Cullen family during this time was pretending to be Esme's brother. So he wasn't either of their sons. He was pretending to be her brother, which I find very interesting. Carlisle scooped Rosalie up and he carried her to a bright room. And then all of a sudden she was just in immense pain. And she remembers Edward not being happy with this. He would even say her name with disgust. And Carlisle was like, I couldn't just leave her. She's too beautiful. She was too beautiful to leave in the street like that. In fact, Carlisle said it was too much of a waste to leave her. So at this point, Rosalie was blaming her looks and appearances on everything, saying, I just wish I could have been like Vera. Skated by and been as happy as can be. And also, if she had been like Vera, she would have been able to marry someone who actually loved her. We also learned that Rose's record when it comes to feeding is almost as good as Carlisle's. It's way better than Esme's, and it's 1,000 bajillion million trillion % better than Edward's. Rosalie did unalive 5 humans, but she actually had a reason for this. In fact, Rosalie always had a thing for theatrics. And these 5 humans that she unalived, she didn't go for their blood. She didn't want their blood in her. And she made sure to save Royce for last. That way he would know something was coming his way and he could just suffer while being paranoid. He locked himself in a windowless room with a door that was as thick as a vault. And there were 2 guards outside, so let me change Rosalie's unaliving number to 7. Because in order to get to Royce, she had to go through the guards. And like a baddie, Rosalie showed up to Royce in her wedding gown. That's actually iconic. We take a step back from the story and Rosalie tells Bella that she's been unfair to Bella. And the reason Rosalie's been unfair to Bella is because she's been jealous. She was jealous that Edward wanted Bella and not her. Now I know all of y'all are being like, what? Not in a romantic way at all. Rosalie was just always used to being the center of attention and being the person that everyone wanted. And Edward never wanted anybody until Bella. And again, it's not just Rosalie. There was Tanya's coven in Alaska that was full of beautiful, beautiful women. And Edward never batted an eye towards them. But then he loses his crap over Bella. Again, just to clarify, she was not jealous in a romantic way, but more in a vain way. Rosalie goes on saying, you have everything I want and you're just throwing it away. You have the choice that I never had and you're choosing wrong. Bella shrugs her shoulders and goes, well, at least you got a happy ending with Emmett. Rosalie says, I got half. I saved Emmett from the bear and I carried him back to Carlisle. I stopped the bear because Emmett had dark curly hair and these dimples. And he almost reminded me of Henry, Vera's son. And selfishly, Rose didn't want anything to happen to him. Rose also says that she got lucky because Emmett is everything she could ever ask for. But there will never be more than just the 2 of them. She will never have the big house with the porch and all her grandchildren with her. She also tells Bella, you will remember this down the line. Alice didn't, and Esme got her fill of that with all of us, pretending to be her children over the years. But you will be just like me and you will remember this. Okay, commentator note, because I know that was a lot. I need each and every one of y'all to keep this conversation in your mind. Keep it in your mind for the next book. We're literally going to drop it for now, but we will come back. You don't have to keep Rosalie's backstory in your mind, but just keep the part with her saying, you will remember this down the line, and all of Rosalie's dreams and wants. Keep that secure up here. Moving on though. The next day it is time for school and Bella is talking to Mike. And then all of a sudden Bella just hears Jake pull up and scream, Bella, come on, hurry! And Bella decides to make a run for it. Alice isn't near her, but she does see Bella during this. And Alice is like, oh no, oh no, oh no, I'm gonna lose my yellow car. He's gonna take it back. And y'all, we officially have a jailbreak because she gets on the motorcycle and they ride off into the distance. So this is a scene in the movie, kind of. Technically, this scene happens when Jacob and Edward are doing their little arguing on the school property. And the movie just kind of squished these 2 scenes together, but it's a separate scene in the book. Jacob and Bella end up at the beach. And guys, I know we just had a dicey, controversial moment, but this one's very problematic. Like, actually problematic. So let's buckle up and let's get ready. Yes. Because it's a choice. We have learned that Quill, Jacob's best friend, has imprinted. And the fact that he's imprinted actually has the rest of the wolf pack freaking out because they've always been told that this is the exception, not the rule. And the fact that 3 people out of the 10 in their pack has just imprinted is insane. And is kind of making them think like maybe this is the rule, that we're all going to be imprinting one day. If you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, who did Quill imprint on? This is so exciting. Please hold your breath. Like, please. Okay? Cool. We're in this together. We're doing great. We're doing great. Quill met Emily's niece, Claire, and the second he saw her was when he imprinted. Claire is 2 years old. Yeah, you heard me right. She's 2. Jacob immediately tries to justify this situation to Bella because Bella is like, 2? And Jacob says, it's fine because Quill will just not age for a few decades and wait. And Bella's like, well, that seems pretty creepy. And the reason it seems pretty creepy is this is essentially grooming. But you know what? I'm a neutral commentator. So being neutral. But let's continue on. Doing great. Jacob tells Bella, you have it all wrong. Their relationship currently has no romantic nature to it. And again, I told you, it's not like love at first sight. It's almost like gravity pulling them towards each other / holding them in place. Here's a very important line that I know y'all have heard. And this has to do with imprinting. So nothing matters but her. And you would do anything for her, be anything for her. Become whatever she needs of you. A protector, a lover, a friend, or a brother. Jake continues saying, Quill will be the best big brother Claire has ever had. And as she gets older, he will be the best friend that she's ever had. And then one day, here's the problematic kicker. Claire is grown, they will be as happy as Emily and Sam. This means everyone is expecting this relationship to be romantic in the future. Putting those expectations on the situation. And Bella has a reasonable question. She goes, well, doesn't Claire have a choice? And Jacob says, well, of course, but why wouldn't she choose him? Yeah, thankfully that's all of that for now because Bella changes the subject. Thank you, Bella. Says, when will this happen to you? Jacob says, never. I would have to see her and I don't see anyone else except for you. Bella says, well, then maybe I should go home. No. Don't do that, Jacob tells her. Jacob also says, were you being serious that it was none of my business if he ends up biting you? Because if he bites you, no matter where you go, he will be breaking the treaty. Bella says, we're going to leave first. It won't happen in Forks. And Jacob clarifies again, there's no geographical limit to our treaty. And Bella goes, well, didn't you already break the treaty when you told me of the cold ones? And Jacob says, no, because it was before I believed in any of that stuff. Before I was officially a part of the pack, I just thought it was some weird story. And Jacob says, you know what, never mind. We still have a few years before it even happens. And Bella says, more like a few weeks. It's happening after I graduate. Jacob tells her that she would be better off dead and that he wished that that were the case. Now he is on his feet, he is pacing, he is angry, and he's trying to calm down so that he doesn't transform. And she ends up leaving him here because what he said to her was very, very rude. So she takes the motorcycle that they had out, and so she takes that and she drives to the Cullen house. When she gets to the Cullen house, she goes in the garage and she sees Alice sitting on the yellow car, and Alice is like, I didn't even have a chance to drive it yet and he's gonna take it away from me. And Bella just says, I'm gonna go to bed. Good night. Bella's a bit groggy, but Edward is now home and she was expecting him to be really mad at her, but he wasn't. They kind of just kissed a little bit. When I say a little bit, I mean like more than normal, to the point where Bella is like, did you change your mind on certain things? Edward's like, no, slow your roll, it's still dangerous. Edward then apologizes for having Alice watch over Bella like a hawk. Bella's like, well, aren't you mad at me too? Don't you want to know what I did? And Edward says, I'm always interested in what you're doing, but you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. And I'm going to trust your judgment from here on out. If you think it's safe and you believe it's safe, then I trust you. It's safe. Bella gets sad and she tells Edward, I don't think I'm going to be going back to La Push anymore. Also tells Edward what Jake told her about how he would rather her be dead than be a vampire. They talk for a little bit. Basically, she tells him the Rosalie story. She asks about Denali. Then she falls asleep. The next morning, Alice is the one who drops Bella off at home because Charlie believes she was at a sleepover with just Alice and that Edward wasn't home. So if Edward were the one to do it, Charlie would be sus. Again, he don't like Edward. And Jacob left a message with Charlie. And Charlie's relaying this message being like, well, Jake said he's sorry, he didn't mean it. Honestly, Bella, I think you should give him a break. He sounds really sad. Instead, Bella just heads upstairs and Charlie's like, aren't you gonna call him? No, I'm not gonna call him. Well, Bella, that's not attractive behavior. And she just mutters, mind your business, as she goes upstairs to do laundry, but she can't find her pillowcase. And then she starts looking for like a specific item of clothing and she can't find that either. So she's like, dang, where did Alice put all my stuff when she came to grab things for the sleepover? Really weird, right? But let's put a pin in this. We'll come back to it in a second. Edward is at the door and he tells her, give me 2 seconds. And so he just like very quickly runs upstairs for some reason. He comes back down and he goes, someone was in your room. And he also says, I don't think it was the werewolves either because it's not a smell I recognize. And since it's a smell that he doesn't recognize, that means it also wasn't Victoria in her room. So who the heck was it? Just assume maybe it was a member of the Volturi and that's the reason that they didn't touch Charlie. They were just kind of after Bella and just kind of peeking in to see what she was up to. Charlie then comes into the kitchen where Bella and Edward are now talking and they're whispering to one another because they don't want Charlie to know what's happening. And in the most unhinged manner, Charlie is literally smiling and he goes, "If y'all are having a fight, don't let me stop ya." Edward then convinces Bella to come with him to go talk to Alice. And he also calms Bella down and says, "I will have Emmett and Jasper sit outside and watch the house to make sure that Charlie is okay." Alice is super confused because she's like, I didn't see anything. I've been keeping tabs on the Volturi and all their decisions and I didn't see them deciding to pay you a visit. So they're both asking like, who else would have left Charlie alive? And Alice says, "Well, I don't know." To which Edward responds with, "Helpful. So helpful." Now all the Cullens have returned. They are debating like who this could potentially be. And Bella's like, "Well, now it's seeming a little more dangerous. Maybe I should become a vampire sooner than graduation." And she can tell by the look on all of their faces that there's nothing she can do to convince them to turn her sooner. Edward also tells Bella, like, you won't ever be left alone. You are completely safe. You are not in danger. And when they get back to Bella's house, Charlie's in a fantastic mood because he thinks that they are fighting. He genuinely thinks that them whispering in a very tense moment was them arguing like maybe they'll potentially break up. Charlie also says that Jacob called again and Bella, you need to stop being petty. And Bella literally looks at Charlie and goes, "Is Jacob paying you for all this free PR or is this just free will?" Later that night, Edward sang her to sleep and she was actually nightmare free, which in my opinion is quite shocking because normally when things like this happen, she has a crazy dream the next night. But no dream, no nightmare. The next morning, Bella tells Edward that she's going to call Jacob and forgive him. And Edward goes, "I knew that was going to happen. You don't hold grudges." That's exactly what Bella does. Bella calls Jacob. She's like, "I forgive you." He was like, "Oh, why?" And before Bella can answer, Edward actually extends his arm out like this, waiting for the phone. And Bella's like, "Oh, okay, here, he wants to talk to you." And Edward explains, "Someone was in Bella's room last night and I will not be letting her out of my sight." And then Bella hears him say, "Oh, well, that's interesting. We are definitely willing to renegotiate if Sam's wanting to." Edward hands the phone back to Bella and Jacob tells her, please try and convince him that the safest place for you is on the reservation. And also Charlie would be the safest too and he would not be suspicious if he had to be here. Anyway, Bella, I'll see you in a few because I need to come sniff out the area. Bella's a little frustrated because since Jacob is coming over, Edward's like, I'm gonna leave, give y'all your space. I will literally return as soon as he's gone. And Edward starts laughing even though nobody has said anything right before Jacob's come in, when that means he's reading his thoughts. And in classic Jacob style, he is shirtless. And Bella questions this, actually. It's easier than having to keep up with a shirt when I'm in wolfy form. And that's kind of valid. I kind of assumed it would be like an Incredible Hulk style. So it makes sense. Jacob's investigating and then he asks Bella, like, what is it even like to have a vampire boyfriend? Like, oh my god, it's the best. Jacob's like, when exactly are you guys going to be doing the transformation? And Bella explains graduation. Right after graduation is when it's gonna happen. And Jacob is actually helping her with the dishes when she tells him that it's graduation. And he literally gets so upset that he squeezes a knife and it cuts his hand. And Bella's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And remember, she cannot really stand the smell of blood. And so she's flipping out and he's like, breathe, I am perfectly fine. Look here, there's nothing on it. And that's because we learned that werewolves heal extremely fast. Then asks, what's it like to have a werewolf as your best friend? And Bella's like, oh, it's the best when he's nice to me. And then Jacob leaves because Edward is now waiting outside. But right before Jacob is out the door, he asks Bella if she would like to come to a bonfire tonight. And Bella's like, I'll have to ask. Jacob's like, what? He has to approve everything? You know, I saw a segment of this on the news. This is sounding like an abusive, controlling relationship, Bella. And she's just like, get out. Please just get out. Go, 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 go. Edward comes back inside and he's holding a huge envelope from Dartmouth, meaning Bella got accepted. And Bella's like, oh, that's nice. That's super cool. Too bad I'm not going. She also tells him saying that I'm going to the University of Alaska is easier for Charlie because he won't be able to visit and I can kind of push off holidays and Christmases. Edward tells her it gets easier after a few decades when everyone you know starts to pass. And when he says this, it makes Bella flinch, rightfully so, in my opinion. That was a little harsher than I think he even intended to make it. Bella then asks Edward, like, hey, can you please get Alice to return my stuff for the sleepover? I can't find anything. And Edward freezes and he's like, what are you talking about? My stuff when Alice made me sleep over at your house. My pillow, my sweatshirt, etc. Edward says, Alice didn't take anything, but all of those things are covered in your scent. Oh my gosh, he was gathering evidence that he found you. Edward then gets a phone call from Carlisle, and all we hear is, maybe I will, I don't know, don't let Emmett go alone. And Edward hangs up the phone, he asks Bella for the newspaper, he flips through it, points at an article and goes, yep, they're being sloppy. Bella is super confused until she reads the headline, and the headline says, Seattle unaliving epidemic continues. It also says underneath, no leads. Edward says this can't be the work of one newborn. There's no way none of them don't know the rules. I don't understand why the Volturi are not stepping in. These are things that they clean up and they're just letting it continue on. Edward then looks at Bella and he's like, it's a good thing we have Jasper in the family because if we are dealing with this many newborns, he knows how to handle them. And Bella's like, what? And Edward tells her, I can't explain because it's not my story to tell. Edward then is like, you know what, this is a really, really tense conversation. Let's move on. Don't you have something you want to ask me? Bella goes, I wasn't actually going to ask you. Well, good, because you don't actually need my permission. If you want to go, you can go. But, Edward says, if it's okay with you, I would like to drive you to the boundary line, and I would also like to give you my cell phone so you can let me know exactly when I can pick you up. This is also kind of showing the age of the book a little bit because this is explaining that Bella really doesn't have her own cell phone, which is why she's having to use his. They then go to the Cullen house, and this part I don't think was in the movies, and I find it very, very interesting. They're in the garage, and she sees this beautiful, sleek, shiny silver motorcycle in there, and she's like, what? We learned that Edward bought this because her and Jacob were fighting, and if they didn't make up and she wanted to go ride a motorcycle, maybe she would let him go with her. That way she could still be doing something that she loved. And while this is actually a sweet gesture, Bella's like, I don't think that would be much fun for you. And Edward says, oh, I see, this is just something that you and Jacob do. I understand. Maybe Jasper would like this motorcycle. I saw him eyeing it a bit. Edward continues on, do me one favor. Please wear this. And he puts a bright red helmet on her head and he gives her a thick leather jacket. Edward then drives her to the boundary line. Jacob sees her and immediately gives her a bear hug, making sure that Edward is watching / can hear all of his thoughts. And because Bella is aware of this, she looks at Jacob and goes, don't push your luck. And Jacob just says, you can't push what you don't have. Okay, time for legends at the bonfire. I talked about this in New Moon. I'm going to talk about it here. I'm also, once again, going to provide resources in the description. Please, if you guys would like to learn more about the actual history, look into it. It'll be there for y'all. As I mentioned, Stephanie Meyer took a lot of creative liberties without asking permission and added a lot of fantastical elements to someone else's culture. And also there was no money or support given from either the movie or the books to this group of people. The main thing that she added from here, which she embellished a whole lot, let me just tell you, again, resources will be everywhere, but the main thing she added was that they're werewolves. And people in real life would literally come to the reservation and ask for the werewolves. Where are the werewolves? Where do you keep the werewolves? When do you guys turn into werewolves? If we make you angry enough, will you be werewolves? So that is why I'm mentioning this here. A lot of it is fictitious. A lot of it is fantastical. She is using the name. She is using the location. And she's using the fact that in their history, I believe it does say that it descends from wolves or something incorporates wolves. And she's like, werewolves. Let's do werewolves instead. And it fits into her story. She took elements of their history and warped it, embellished it to fit her story. Also, it is the Quileute tribe. For some reason, I think I just said all of that and I didn't even mention the name of it. So, Quileutes, by the way. Quileutes. We're at the bonfire. Bella is seeing everyone and then she notices Jared and a girl. And this is the first time that Bella is meeting the girl that Jared imprinted on. And honestly, Bella is not too nice to her in her head. No. She literally just calls this girl plain. In fact, she calls her plain with wide cheekbones, eyes too small to balance everything out, and also a nose that's too broad for traditional beauty. She just met this girl, hasn't even talked to her, is looking at her from afar, and is saying that. What on earth? I will say that she does change her opinion a bit after watching Jared and Kim, her name is Kim by the way, interact together. Because Bella's thinking, well, I guess there isn't really anything plain about her, at least not to Jared. She describes the way Jared is looking at Kim like a blind man looking at the sun for the first time. Guys, let's give Kim a break and let's move into the actual stories. Billy is telling the stories. He is saying that before they were shapeshifters, aka werewolves, they were spirit warriors. Not the first chief, but the first one that they remember was the first great spirit chief. And when they would leave the ships or the boats, they would actually leave their bodies and just take their spirit, and their bodies would be looked after by the women. Physically in battle, they could not touch the enemy tribe, but they learned that they were able to communicate with the animals. The animals were able to see them and understand them, and they used this to their advantage. In fact, the group of animals that they used were big, furry dogs. Obviously, using the big, furry dogs, they were able to win the battle that they were in, and then they were able to negotiate treaties with other neighboring tribes. Generations have passed since this story. Generations. We are now at a different time, still in the past, with the last great spirit chief. Could really be mispronouncing this, and I hope that I'm not, and if I am, please correct me, please. I believe his name was Taha Aki, and this last great spirit chief, he was known for wisdom and peace. And his people were really content except for one man. And the man who was not happy, I believe his name was pronounced Utlapa? And this man was the strongest spirit warrior. And he believed, he was like, strength in numbers, we are great in battle. Let's just take over. And everyone else was like, no, that's crazy. And they banish him. He is gone. But he came back one day in hopes to eliminate Taha Aki. Secretly waited until he saw Taha Aki leave his body, go into spirit form, and then he made his move. And when Taha Aki returned to his body, there was nothing to return to. It wasn't there. The only body there was Utlapa. That while Taha Aki's spirit was outside of his body, the plan was to put Utlapa's spirit inside the physical form of Taha Aki. People would think that that was actually him and not Utlapa inhabiting him. That sounds so confusing, doesn't it? Maybe I'll break it up a little more. Utlapa leaves his body, so he is just a spirit. He puts his spirit inside of Taha Aki. So now when he goes to the people, they will believe that this is their chief giving them orders. And Taha Aki is now bodiless. And Taha Aki could only watch everything go down. He couldn't even step in because no one could see him except the wolves. And actually, he only tried to get the wolf to get rid of him and eliminate his body so that there'd be no more. But at the end of the day, he couldn't do it. And so he just followed the wolf and he asked the wolf to make room for him. Thus, his spirit went inside of the wolf. In wolf form, he did not attack his people. In fact, the people actually realized, like, hey, this is not a normal wolf. One man actually decided to take matters into his own hands and disobey the direct orders, go in the spirit world and try to interact with the wolf. Utlapa, still in Taha Aki's body, saw him do this and was like, oh, no, and tried to eliminate this man. And sadly, this man was too slow, and by the time he got back into his body, was not able to win. And he was... Also, I know y'all are sitting there being like, you were describing this so weirdly. I'm trying to avoid certain words so that we don't get flagged or anything like that. So that's why I'm doing like, or unaliving or things like that. That's why. Taha Aki watched this happen and he was so angry that the next time he joined the wolf's body, the wolf transformed into a man. And this man was the flesh representation of the spirit. And he was very, very strong and no one else stood a chance. And he was now the great wolf. The story goes on. Years have passed. And this is the story of the third wife's sacrifice. This is the one that's like actually important to remember. This is the third wife of Taha Aki, by the way. We have learned that when the men would give up their spirit wolf powers, they would be able to age. And now that we know this, we've also learned that Taha Aki has aged because he has gotten rid of those powers. In a neighboring tribe, women were going missing for some reason, and they were blaming each other, like having no clue what went on. And they were like, well, you guys are the closest ones to us. It must be you. And Taha Aki is like, no, that's not how it works. But you know what? We will help you figure out what's going on and what's happening. And also the reason he knew that it was none of them was because when they're in wolf form, they can read each other's thoughts. So since he had already given up his abilities, he was not able to transform into a wolf anymore. He asked his son to go into wolf form and investigate and see what's happening. His son took a pack into the woods with him, and all of a sudden he came across this really sweet smell. It was so sweet that it burned his nostrils. Half the pack was actually sent back because it was such a long journey. But his son continued on. The group that continued on never returned. This actually included not one, but 3 of Taha Aki's sons. And because of this horrific event, they were no longer at risk of being in battle because they could see the mourning that Taha Aki was in. So obviously his people would not have done this. All of a sudden it was peaceful again, which is so weird. But 1 year later, 2 more women went missing. Yes, that sweet smell was back. They sent another pack to go investigate the smell, and only 1 came back. This was the oldest son of Taha Aki's 3rd wife. He came back with a stony corpse. And his son explained that this creature looked like a rock, but it had red eyes. And he tore this corpse into pieces, and so they thought, well, it's already dismembered, there's no coming back from that, until they saw its arm start to move unattached from his body, trying to put the pieces back together. And so they put every single piece that they could find and throw it into the fire, and that's where they learn that you have to completely dismember it and put it in the fire for them to be eliminated. I would also like to note that this son is actually the last wolf protector that they have left. The creature that they just disposed of actually had a mate, and this mate was ticked off and wanted revenge. There were 20 witnesses to the mate showing up, and only 2 of the 20 survived. So the oldest son transformed into a wolf. 3rd wife, Taha Aki, the elders, and some sons followed. The creature went to the harbor. She was attacking things on boats, and as soon as she saw that she was being followed, she turned around and went back to the shoreline to fight. The last remaining son did not survive, and the 3rd wife watched this happen. The creature is now fighting with Taha Aki, and the 3rd wife, who just saw her son lose his life, is now having to watch her husband fight. And so she is stressing, and she does the only thing she can think of to try to help. She grabs a dagger, she runs towards the creature, and instead of going at the creature with this dagger, she sinks to her knees and she plunges it into her chest. The creature was so distracted by the smell of this action, the creature was off guard to the point where Taha Aki was able to win. But at what cost? Because he lost his sons and his wife, and Taha Aki laid with his 3rd wife's body and never rejoined the tribe and just went into the woods. Okay, we are still in the legends that Stephanie Meyer created. Time has passed and descendants no longer turned into wolves unless a cold one appeared. So Jacob's great-grandfather was the last chief, and the coven of cold ones near them was so large that when their leader, who we now know is Carlisle, came up to talk to them about a potential treaty, it seemed to be in everyone's interest to accept this treaty. This is also because the coven was so large and they were really outnumbered. Bella's sitting there listening to the stories, and she drifts off because she's just thinking of this woman and they don't even know her name. And then all of a sudden Bella's just in Jacob's vehicle. Like, doesn't even remember that happening. But Jacob was actually very well behaved. He called Edward so Edward would be able to meet her at the boundary line. When they got there, Edward was pacing back and forth like he was very anxious. And Bella had a dream that night. She dreamt she was on the beach during a storm. She saw Rosalie lunging for a silver wolf. And Bella ran, but it felt like she was running in slow motion. Bella also tried to scream, but she couldn't. And then all of a sudden she saw this dagger. She picked it up, and then she woke up because the dream is over. Edward asks if there's anything that she wants to tell him or talk to him about. And she's like, no, too tired. Another little commentator note, he is now reading her copy of Wuthering Heights. Remember earlier he was like, I hate that book. He's now reading her copy while she's asleep. And he tells her that the scene he's reading is actually making him sympathize with Heathcliff. Like maybe he's seeing it from a different perspective now. And in the morning, Bella opens up the book so that she can see exactly what scene he was talking about. And I'm gonna read it for y'all. This is from Wuthering Heights. And there you see the distinction between our feelings. Had he been in my place and I in his, though I hated him with a hatred that turned my life to gall, I never would have raised a hand against him. You may look incredulous if you please. I never would have banished him from her society as long as she desired his. The moment her regard ceased, I would have torn his heart out and drank his blood. But till then, if you don't believe me, you don't know me. Till then, I would have died by inches before I touched a single hair on his head. After Bella reads this scene, she's like, I must have been dreaming that because there is no way that Edward would be able to sympathize with this. There's no way. Like, he knows he's my one and only, right? Alice informs Bella that she is throwing a graduation party for Bella, and Bella's like, no thank you. No, I don't want this. No thank you. And Alice, being Alice, obviously, ignores her and ignores her wishes and is like, oh, by the way, thank you for the gift. And Bella's like, I didn't get you anything. Yeah, but you will, and I love it. Thank you so much. Alice also reminds Bella that it's almost time for graduation, and Bella is like, holy heck, how is that even possible? I feel like it should still be May, and it's June 4th. Like, it is literally almost time for graduation, which means it's almost time for her to be transformed. And this is causing her to have a tiny existential crisis because she's about to have to say goodbye to everything she's ever known. When Alice leaves, Edward is still staring at Bella and goes, please tell me what you're thinking because it is driving me insane not being able to go into your mind right now. And Bella goes, I don't know. I'm just thinking about Charlie. And Edward simply says, you're not ready. I am. She lies. The book says, and I quote, she lies. And then she backtracks and says, I have to be. Edward says, you don't have to be. You're completely fine. We can wait. You have a choice. None of us did, but you do. We can wait. Carlisle promised. He promised not until you were ready. Edward interrupts. Bella then changes the subject and goes, okay, so what exactly am I getting, Alice? Edward laughs and he's like, those concert tickets you were looking at the other day, I think that's what she's expecting. And then Bella hops into their previous conversation and is like, why don't you want me to be a vampire? And Edward simply says, because you could do so much better. For me to let you become what I am is the most selfish thing I could ever do. And if there was a way for me to be human for you, no matter the cost, I would do it. So you're not worried you might not like me? That's what you're worried about, that I won't like you? Always gonna be my Bella, you'll just be a bit more durable. You know what, while we're doing this, it's now my time to ask you a question. Why don't you want to be my wife? Bella says, because I'm not that girl. I'm not the girl to get married right out of high school. Do you know what people are gonna think? And Edward says, that's it, right? It's not just because you want immortality more than you want me. Bella says, there's no point to forever if you're not there with me. Edward then says, you say you're not that girl, but I've always been that boy. Anyone else kind of feel like we're listening to Elphaba's song, I'm Not That Girl? Because that's what's playing through my mind right now. Anywho, Edward's like, I've always been that boy. Always. Edward wasn't looking for love, he was excited to be a soldier. And if I would have found you back then, I would have gotten down on one knee and secured your hand. I would have still wanted you for eternity. Bella says, well, in my head, marriage and eternity are not the same. She pauses and then she says, so the condition? He interrupts and goes, the condition is still the same. If you want me to be the one to change you, you're gonna have to accept my proposal. She starts humming what's supposed to be a wedding march, but it literally comes out like the funeral march. So there's that. More time has passed, she's home, she sees that Charlie left out the paper on the table, and more bad things have happened in Seattle. Poor Seattle. Everything had been burned, by the way, so there was no evidence, so there's really no trail for anyone to go on to figure out what's happening right now. There was no hair, no fingerprints, nothing left at the scene. And all the victims disappeared at night, so this really is adding up to being vampires / newborns. Edward pops up behind Bella and he sees that she's reading the newspaper. And Edward says, we literally can't see anything that's happening right now. Do you mind if we play hooky today? We need to talk to Jasper. Go to the Cullen house. Emmett is like, guys, we gotta go to Seattle right now. We gotta fix this. Carla was like, I'm a little concerned. We never ever insert ourselves, and normally the Volturi step in at this point and they haven't. It says, I do think we're gonna have to go to Seattle though, because I don't want the Volturi to have to come here. Because if they come here, they're probably gonna make a pit stop in Forks and look for Bella. Then no one is saying anything, but Edward goes, oh, Jasper, you're right. You're 1000% correct. Bella is staring at Edward like, care to share with the class? And Jasper goes, you're confused, Bella. You're confused. And Edward responds with, we're all confused right now. You're not saying anything. Jasper looks at Emma and is like, you can be patient right now. Bella needs to understand this too. Starts to roll up his sleeves and he goes, how much do you know about me, Bella? And as he's rolling up his sleeves, Bella notices that he has a scar that's very similar to hers that she got from James. Except it's not just one scar, he's covered in them. The only thing that can leave a scar on a vampire is the venom. There are places in the world that are much more desirable to vampires. Places where vampires can live with no restraints. And honestly, the covens in the South don't really care what the humans see or don't see. Only thing that keeps them in check is the Volturi. And the way Jasper says the Volturi shakes Bella to her core because he says it with so much respect and love. And Bella's experience with the Volturi is much different. Much different. Jasper says that the North is much more civilized. In the South, the immortals come out at night. And while they're waiting for it to become night, they're just plotting ways to take over land from their enemies. And honestly, the South was a constant battle because vampires were fighting for control of land that had the most humans. The most effective tactic to get rid of the competition was actually created by a vampire named Benito. He created an army of newborn vampires. And the messy thing with dealing with newborns is they are impossible to control. Anywho, the vampires in southern Mexico knew what was coming their way. So they did the exact same thing. And it was a mess. The only way the Volturi was able to hide the body count from humans was by blaming it on a disease. So that's what it was written down as in our history books. Also, when the Volturi stepped in, they wiped out like all the vampires from Mexico. Completely wiped them out because they were all participating in this constant battle for power. Very few survivors made their way to the South to stake their claim. And obviously, there was another fight for power. But since the Southern vampires were aware that the Volturi could just come in and wipe everyone out, they were smarter this time. Of course, here's Jasper's problematic backstory. I don't know why on earth Stephanie chose this backstory for Jasper when she literally had all of history to do something different. But that's a thing, I guess. Anywho, Jasper was 17 and he was living in Houston, Texas. And he had just joined the Confederate Army. And yes, you did hear that correctly. It was a choice. She chose it. Moving forward, Jasper did lie about his age. He was 17, but he was still able to join the army because of this lie. He was tasked in making sure that women and children got to a specific base. And when they reached the city where they were supposed to go, he saw these 3 women that were just walking. And Jasper just assumed that they were left behind. So he got off his horse and he's like, are you guys okay? You guys can come with me. Let me help you. They all had very pale skin, and one of them said, yes, Maria, you better be the one to do it. The one named Maria says, yes, I will. I like this one. Jasper didn't flee, even though his gut was telling him to. And the reason he didn't flee is, and I quote, he had not been taught to fear women, but to protect them. Maria says, I hope you survive. I have a good feeling about you. And she leaned in like she was going to kiss him, and that is all he remembers from that moment, because a few days later is when he finally wakes up. The 3 women were named Maria, Nettie, and Lucy. Maria is the one who found the other 2 women. They were survivors of a different battle, and Maria was after revenge. Maria wanted soldiers, and Maria put Jasper in charge of the others. Jasper says, I worshipped the ground she walked on. And he also admits that I had no clue that there was any other way of living. I thought this was the only way I could continue on with my life. Of the original 23 newborns, Jasper was the only one to survive the first 18 months. Down our little story road, Nettie and Lucy actually turned on Maria but Maria won, and Nettie and Lucy were no more. And the newborns were their pawns. Decades later, so even more time has passed, Jasper's still with Maria, and he befriends a newborn named Peter. And his job was to babysit the newborns. One day, it was time to dispose of the newborns and switch them out for a new newborn crew. Peter was supposed to help, but he wasn't having it. Kind of looked like Peter was gonna fight Jasper, so Jasper was like taking a stance, and then Peter looked and saw a female newborn named Charlotte. Right then and there, Peter's feelings changed. He yelled for Charlotte to run, and Peter chased after her. Jasper chose not to chase them. He did this because he didn't want to destroy them, which is already taking a step in a different direction from Maria. 5 years after this, Maria's starting to act a little weird towards Jasper, almost like how she was acting towards Nettie and Lucy. And so Jasper's thinking, oh, soon we are gonna have to fight. That is how this is gonna go. But Peter arrived that very same day that Jasper was getting ready to fight. And Peter told Jasper all about this new life he was living where there was no fighting and they could just live their life without hurting anybody. And Jasper went with Peter and Charlotte. Yes, as we know, Jasper can manipulate feelings, but everyone's feelings affect him so much. So anytime someone is feeling sad, it just overwhelms his body. He feels everything all at once, essentially. With this knowledge, Jasper explains that he grew very, very depressed on this journey, to the point where he left Peter and Charlotte just to be on his own. Jasper was so weary of this lifestyle that he's lived for years at this point. Also felt trapped because there was no other way for him to survive. At least none that he knew of. Jasper says, I was in Philadelphia on a stormy day and I went to a diner. And there she was waiting for me. And she looked at me and said, you have kept me waiting a long time. Alice now enters the chat and she says, well, all you told me was, I'm sorry, ma'am. While he's looking at Alice, Jasper says, held out your hand and I took it without thinking. And for the first time in my life, I felt hope. Alice told me of Carlisle and we went looking for him. Edward now interrupts the story and goes, yeah, you scared all of them. I remember our hunting, when we get back, we see these two random people and learn that Alice and Jasper showed up and was like, hi family, which room should I move into? And she also called them by name. Edward also says, and I got home and all my stuff was moved into the garage. So she literally just took over his bedroom. Jasper, now done with his story, he says, this is definitely an army of newborns in Seattle right now. I'm so surprised that the Volturi has not stepped in to do anything. If we want to avoid the Volturi, we need to step in soon. Alice says, the Volturi aren't coming for us. I've been following all of their decisions and we're not even on their radar. And for some reason, I can't see a clear picture. It's like someone is constantly changing their mind. Edward says, that's knowledge. Someone knows how to skirt by without being seen in your visions. Someone is hiding, like Arrow, who doesn't want to get his hands dirty. Rosalie pipes in and goes, like a favor. Favor for someone who should be destroyed, but they're giving them a second chance. Basically, if they handle one problem for the Volturi, they'll let them live. Edward goes on and says, I saw jealousy in Arrow's mind. Of our family, Carlisle. He's jealous of us. Ours is the largest coven they've ever found. And they'll just clean us up after. No harm done. No one will ever question it. But that way, they won't have to live in fear of us having too much power against them. Carlisle looks at Edward very seriously and then he says, Jasper, you're going to need to teach us how to fight newborns. Jasper says, well, we can, but we're going to need some help. Maybe we should ask Tanya's coven? And immediately, Carlisle's on the phone talking to Tanya and goes, oh, I didn't realize that. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I understand. We then hear Edward curse under his breath. Laurent. Please remember what we learned in the last book. Laurent had spent about a year with Tanya's coven in Alaska, and him and Irina had gotten so close. And they were literally a thing. They were a thing. Irina wants revenge on the wolves for what they did to Laurent. Carlisle was told, if you help us take down the wolves, we will help you handle the newborns. Obviously, Carlisle can't agree to those terms. Bella starts to freak out a little bit and she looks around the room at everyone's faces. Thinks to herself, yeah, we can win, but we're also gonna lose. That made her want to scream. Even though chaos is happening right now in Seattle, Alice is like, we are continuing on with the party. There are also 65 people coming to this party. It was supposed to be 67, but Phil and Renee had to cancel because Phil broke his thigh bone. so they're not showing up. But 65 people, that's a lot. Jasper is currently looking for anyone that can help them, and he's honestly thinking about contacting Maria, which freaks Alice out. Okay, here's a little bit of lore. We learned that newborns are so strong because they're full of human blood. Basically, they're just reacting to the change while this human blood is still in their body. After their finals, Edward drives Bella to where she is meeting Jacob. Jacob is in his rabbit car. We also learn that Billy is currently at the Clearwater's house, which would be Seth, Leah, and Sue, because Sue's struggling a little bit because in the last book, her husband Harry passed. She's struggling because of other things too, but I'm not going to go into that until the story does. Jacob is exhausted because Sam is having him run double shifts because no one trusts the vampires. And then he's like, I feel like I've been talking about myself for so long. What about you? Do you have any fun plans after graduation besides, you know, the transformation? Bella's like, well, I guess Alice is throwing a graduation party with 65 people. And Jacob's like, well, I didn't get an invite. And so Bella responds with, well, then consider yourself invited. Bella is just kind of chilling there while Jacob takes a nap, and she's thinking about Edward and how she really wants Edward to be the one to turn her because she thinks that that would also kind of unite them in a more tangible way. And she does for a split second have a vision of her and Edward on a porch, and it kind of reminds her of like Anne of Green Gables, and she's not mad at this vision. And in the vision, they're wearing period clothing and she has a ring on her ring finger. Jacob wakes up, and I'm gonna need each and every one of you to just inhale and exhale because it's a doozy. It's a doozy. He tells her that he needs to get something off his chest and that he is in love with her. He continues on because she's not talking, and he says, I want you to pick me instead of him. And I know you won't do that, but I don't want a miscommunication to be what stands in our way. Bella is feeling very awkward right now, so she tries to leave, and Jacob stops her and he's like, tell me why you always want me around. Because you're family and I love you, but not like that. Not in the way you want me to be. I'm in love with him. He's my whole life. But you love me too, Jacob argues. That means he's not your whole life, and until your heart stops beating, I'm not gonna stop fighting. He then grabs her chin, has it in his hands. She is saying, no, no. And he still kisses her. And she is literally pushing him back. He's not moving at all. And since he won't stop, she just drops her arms by her side, opens her eyes, and stays there like a statue until he's done. When he finally stops, she looks at him and goes, are you finished? She then rears her arm back and punches him in the face. And instead of him being like, ow, my face, she is like, ow, my hand, because she is the one inflicted with pain in this moment, and he doesn't even flinch. She literally is like, you broke my hand. And Jacob just responds with, no, Bella, you broke your own hand. And he reaches out to touch her, and she's like, don't touch me. I need to get home. I'm walking home. And somehow he does convince her to let him drive her home. And she says, I can't wait to see what Edward does to you. And in the car, he keeps talking about how great of a kiss this was. And how he bets Edward can't do that to her. And that he would never hurt her either. And Bella just raises her hand like, I am hurt. He looks at her and he looks at her hand and says, that's not my fault. You should have known better. That's from the book, by the way. He also says, and you kissed me back and you know it. And Bella argues and she goes, no, I didn't. That was me trying to push you away. Stops the car. She keeps telling him like, go home, literally go home, leave me alone. Instead, he walks into her house with her. And Charlie is like, what's wrong? What's going on? What's going on? And Jacob goes, oh, Bella hit me because I kissed her. And Charlie says, good for you, kid, to Jacob. Yes, you heard that right. Charlie congratulated the man who kissed his daughter without her consent, and she felt the need to punch him in the face because he wouldn't get off of her. And he got congratulated. I don't care if you're not Team Edward. I don't care. That's your prerogative. I don't care if you're Team Jacob. That's your prerogative. You are her father. Can you at least be Team Bella? Please? You're her dad. Hello? And the chief of police. Hello? Movie Charlie is better than book Charlie, and I stand by that. At least in this one. This scene gets me heated. I really don't like this scene. Sorry, not sorry. I'm gonna take a breather. I told you all to inhale, exhale, and I don't think I did, so Moving forward, she calls Edward and she asks him, can you come get me and take me to Carlisle because I broke my hand punching Jacob in the face? Wow, great. What did he do to deserve that? That's awesome. Bella quickly says he kissed me. You can literally hear his car accelerating as she says this. Charlie is now looking at Jacob being like, Jacob, you might want to leave. Edward gets there and Charlie immediately looks at Edward and says, I don't want any fighting. I don't want any fighting right now. Doesn't look at Jacob, just Edward. When they get to Edward's car, Edward looks at Jacob and he says, if you ever bring her back damaged to me, you'll be running with 3 legs. And if you ever try to kiss her again, I will break your jaw for her. Jacob says, well, what if she wants me to? And Edward replies with, well, if that's what she wants, then I won't object. But if she doesn't want that, your jaw is broken. Edward continues on saying, she's mine and I don't fight fair. They get to the Cullen house and Emmett looks at Bella and looks at her hand and is like, Bella, did you fall again? And Bella's like, no, Emmett, I punched a werewolf in the face. And he just erupts in laughter and Rosalie says, oh, Jasper's gonna be the one to win this bet. They are currently betting on how many times she's gonna slip up when she's a vampire, and Jasper's betting pretty high. In the movie, right after this scene when Carlisle wraps up her hand, which we don't even really get in the book, this is when Rosalie tells Bella her backstory. So we get Rosalie's backstory a whole lot earlier in this book. Guys, that was a lot. I think we need some happy moments up in here, so let's go to graduation. Alice gives Bella a box to unwrap. Bella likes it and Alice says, well, it's so nice to finally get something right for a change. And this makes up for me missing the intruder. Now if I can just figure out why they're in Seattle and what they're doing there. And when Alice puts these 2 situations together, it clicks in Bella's mind. They're connected. They're not 2 separate events. The intruders are the same people in Seattle. And the intruder taking some of Bella's things was a test to poke holes in Alice's vision to see if there really were blind spots. Once Bella tells Alice this, Alice is like, I gotta go. I can't be near Edward. I gotta go. He's gonna read my thoughts and then flip out. So she's out. When it's finally time to graduate, they're standing in line. Bella is right next to Jessica because their names are in alphabetical order. I think she's Jessica Stanley, Bella Swan. So they're like right by each other. The valedictorian is doing his speech. It's Eric. In the movie, it's Jessica. Bella gets her diploma and that's that. She is now a high school graduate. Bella finds Edward immediately after and she's like, where's Alice? And Edward's like, I don't know, but it's the weirdest thing. She was translating the battle hymn of the Republic in Arabic in her mind. And Edward smiles, looks at Bella and goes, do you know what she's hiding? Bella immediately explains everything. Edward rushes away. He needs to go tell everybody what's going on. Being our #1 Team Jacob supporter, he shows up and he's like, did you see that Jacob and his dad were here? And Bella's like, yeah, I could hear them too. They were so loud. So loud. They did not show up in the movie, but they do in the book. Bella and Charlie go to dinner. They finish up their meal. Charlie's taking his sweet time, saying goodbye to everyone in the restaurant because he's a hot shot in the town. Bella's just chilling in the parking lot waiting. And she sees a figure coming up to her and it is Edward. And she just tells Edward, I'll have Charlie drop me off at your house. And Edward's like, that's fine. I will trail y'all to make sure that you get there safely. Finally, we have a redemption moment for Charlie. Charlie says, I never thought I was gonna have to teach you how to punch, but I guess I was wrong. And Bella literally says, I thought you were Team Jacob. No matter what side I'm on, if someone kisses you without your permission, you should be able to make your feelings heard without hurting yourself. So if there is a next time, punch him in the gut. Drops Bella off at the Cullens house. And since it's graduation night, do you know what's happening right now? The graduation party. And Alice really went full out. There are lights everywhere. It is very, very decorated. And you would think them learning the news that these 2 incidences, the newborns and then the intruder, are connected, would be like, you know what? Let's not have a party. No, that did not stop them. The party must go on. The show must go on. And no one's there yet because it's not the actual start time of the party. And Alice is like, do you think people are gonna show up? Like, what if nobody shows up? And Edward is like, you are completely fine. Everyone is gonna show up because nobody has seen what our house looks like. They're too curious to ignore this party. The party was a success. Everyone was having a great time until the werewolf showed up. And Bella's like, what on earth are you doing here to Jacob? To which Jacob responds with, you invited me. In case my right hook was too subtle for you, you were uninvited. Jacob responds with, oh, don't be a poor sport. I actually got you a graduation gift. Bella says, well, then take it back to the store. To which Jacob replies with, I can't, it's handmade. He also grabs her chin in this moment because you know what? He doesn't know how to keep his hands to himself. Personal space. In fact, she says, can you keep your hands to yourself? In this moment, he just guilt trips her. He's like, I guess you just want to be with your real friends. She's like, oh, okay, where's my present then? What is it? And he gives her a bracelet, and on the bracelet is this wooden wolf charm, and the charm is what he made. Finally, Alice pops up and looks at Bella and is like, I need to talk to you right now. And Jacob's in between them, so he throws his arm up like this to where like Bella can't move. While he's blocking them, he says, you need to tell me what's going on. Something's happening. What's up? Jasper has now popped up on the other side of Jacob because he literally has essentially blocked off Alice, and that does not make Jasper happy. And so Jasper's just glaring. And Alice is like, it's okay, Jasper. Jacob's actually right. Alice turns to Bella and says, the decision's been made. They're not going to Seattle. They're coming here. Jacob says, well, then the wolves are also going to fight because we're not sitting this one out. And the wolves have actually entered the chat, and they will be at a strategic meeting with the Cullens to figure out how they move forward. And this meeting is being held at 3 a.m. In the movie, I don't know what time it was held at, but it was not 3 a.m. Bella tells Edward after the party, you're taking me with you because I need to know what's going on. I can't be left in the dark anymore. He takes Bella home until this little meeting, and he calms her down, saying the newborns will be taken completely by surprise. Honestly, the newborns shouldn't even know that werewolves exist, so this is an extra element of surprise in our favor. It's now 3 a.m. It's time for the meeting, and Bella tells Edward she now believes that all three things are connected with one another. So that would be Victoria, the newborns, and the intruder. Bella explains this to Edward by saying, do you remember when you were in Texas last year following Victoria? Bella says when she was in Texas, that's probably how she got the idea for all of this. Since Laurent stayed with Tanya, Tanya probably told them all about your family, including Alice's visions. And we already know that Laurent and Victoria were still in talks with one another, so he probably told her everything. And I think that's why Victoria is able to be so sneaky. Edward is like, it's a good theory, but I still think it's the Volturi. Edward tells everyone that he's going to translate for the wolves because they do not feel comfortable enough being in their human form. The pack has also grown, by the way, and there are 10 werewolves. Edward, who is speaking for Sam, so technically, Sam is saying, we will sit, watch, and listen, but that's it. Carlisle nods and says, my son, Jasper, is going to teach us how to fight the newborns. Currently, the newborns are at 20, so it'll be 10 for the wolves and 10 for the Cullens. Guys, let's learn how to fight. Let's get ready for battle. Suit up. Jasper says the two most important things to take into consideration when fighting newborns is don't ever let them get behind you and don't go for the obvious attack. Jasper and Emmett are the ones who fight first, and Jasper wins, and so Emmett is like, let's go again. Let's go again. I want a rematch. Rematch. They don't have time for this, so then we switch up our pairings. Jasper looks at Bella and he says, I want to show you something so you're not as scared. He then asks Alice to be the next one to spar with him, and he does this so that Bella can see, like, Alice can hold her own. She's not some delicate little flower. She's speedy, she's fast. Bella doesn't have to be worried about Alice. It's now Edward's turn to go against Jasper. In the movie, I think Edward goes against Carlisle, but here it's Edward and Jasper. And while they are fighting, Alice looks at Bella and tells her that I am watching out for you. And that if anything gets more set in stone, she will tell Edward. And finally, that even if Bella wasn't here, there would still be a fight. So she can't change anything, so don't do anything irresponsible. Edward and Jasper are still sparring. They're having a great time, and it ends in a tie, so we have to move on. They keep doing this until everyone's had some time to participate, and then Sam, through Edward, asks Carlisle if they can get all the Cullens set. So one by one, they start sniffing everyone. Jacob comes up to Bella in wolf form, and licks her face. Again, in wolf form. Edward then comes over to Jacob, and he says it's more complicated than that. Jacob then leaves for literally 1 second so he can be a human, and then walks over in his human form. Jacob says she'll be safe at the reservation. This is also where we learn that a plan has been made to make sure that Charlie is not home this weekend when the fight starts. Charlie will be with Billy, and they will be out of town. I think they're going fishing. Edward tells Jacob that she can't go to La Push because she's already been there too many times. Her scent is up and down the road. Jacob tells Edward, what if we just confuse her scent with my scent? Now Jasper has appeared, and they're going to test this theory. The reason it has to be Jasper is because Bella's scent is much more potent to Edward, and he would be able to smell her anywhere. And when they experiment with this, Jasper's like, I don't get anything but dog. That's it. So this works. This is gonna be a good plan. Edward also says that Bella needs to leave a false trail with her scent. That way the newborns will get confused, but also almost in an excited frenzy over her smell. I will bring her here on Friday for you to take up the trail. You will be carrying her somewhere I know is safe. Jacob also says that Seth will stay watch because Seth is wanting to be a part of the battle, but he's still so young and is just now a wolf. Just now. That this is really the only place where he will fit in without getting hurt. And if Seth is with her, we can use Seth almost like a cell phone. Guys, now we have a plan. It's a pretty good one too, if I do say so myself. Edward brings Bella home and she literally sleeps the whole next day. The whole day away. Edward now sees the present that Jacob got her and he's like, so he can give you a present, but I can't. And Bella says, you've given me presents, the homemade kinds, and those are my favorite. Edward then goes, what about hand-me-downs? Do you accept those? And are you gonna be wearing this bracelet a lot? I mean, sure, I guess so. Well, then don't you think it's fair if I get some representation? Edward asks. Bella then says, you're more important to me than anyone else. And also, you've given me you. That's all I could ever ask for. Anything more would just be throwing the scales off balance. Edward gets a call from Alice and he says, yeah, I kind of thought so because she was talking a lot in her sleep. He hangs up the phone, he looks at Bella and he's like, is there anything you want to tell me? Bella says, I don't want to be in the forest when you're taking risks for me. Edward tells Bella that Alice now is having visions of Bella just wandering through the woods by herself on this day. Edward says, I guess I'll have Sam or Jacob give Seth orders to make sure that you stay put. This is where we learn that Jacob is now second in command. It's a big deal. Edward says, though, I got all the werewolf tea last night. Let me tell you, it's piping hot. And Bella's like, wait, what is it? Tell me more, tell me more. Here's the tea, and it actually is pretty good. It's pretty good. They have always accepted with no question that it was a direct grandson of the original wolf that would transform. Emphasis on grandson. Because somehow Leah has been able to transform and Leah is now a part of the pack. You guys remember Leah, right? She's Seth's sister, but also Sam's ex. Oh, and not only that, Sam's wife's cousin. So she is now in the pack, and that means there are no secrets. So everyone can hear everyone's thoughts. So she is now just living with all of that, and that is horrific. Horrific. And because this is so horrific, Leah's a little malicious, let me tell ya. Anytime someone brings up something where she's like, ugh, she will bring up Embry. Jacob's friend, Embry. His mother moved down from a neighboring tribe like 17 years ago, and everyone just assumed that Embry's dad was a part of that tribe. She left. But you know what? Guys, Embry's a wolf. He's a wolf. That means that his father is a part of this pack in some way. And there's only 3 options of who it could be. It's either related to Quill, Sam, or Jacob. And it also means that each of these people's parents had an affair because they were all married at the time that Embry would have been a thing. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. And they all think it's Sam, but Jacob's also not positive and Jacob doesn't want to ask his dad. Bella's listening. She's like, whoa, that really is like a crazy soap opera moment. But also, can we get back to our conversation at hand? You said it was easy for someone to sit out. Did you mean that? Edward nods and is like, yes. And Bella replies with, so you can sit out? Edward says, you want me to let my family fight without my help? Bella nods and says, yes, or let me be there and we can help together. Bella can't read his expression, but he takes out his cell phone, he calls Alice and says, hey, can you come over and sit with Bella for a second? I need to talk to Jasper about something. Looks at Bella and says, I need to discuss sitting out. Bella then says, I'm so sorry. And Edward says, don't apologize. Don't ever be afraid to tell me how you feel. You are my first priority. You're what matters. Well, Bella says, I didn't mean for you to choose me over your family. Edward says, I know that, but that's also not what you did. You gave me 2 options that you could live with, and I gave you the answer for the one I could live with. Compromise. Bella says, thank you. Edward says, anytime. Now, can you tell me the story of the 3rd wife? Because you kept saying that in your sleep. Bella just shrugs and says, that was the story I heard at the bonfire. And before she could continue on, she was a little bit saved by the bell because this is when Alice comes over. Alice says there's actually not a lot to work out because she's already told everyone and Emmett's pleased. As Edward leaves, Alice looks at Bella and she's like, you worry too much. Don't you have any faith in me? Charlie comes home and Alice explains, yeah, like I'm home alone. They're all going hiking. I'm not going with them. I'm just by myself. Like, what a bummer. And Charlie's like, oh my gosh, well, Alice, why don't you just come spend the night over here? That's fine with us. Like, please make yourself feel at home. And Bella says, well, Dad, we don't really have any sleeping arrangements for her unless she wants to sleep on my floor. Charlie nods and goes, oh, you're right. Maybe you should go spend the night over there, Bells. Maybe that's for the best. Alice interrupts and goes, oh, Bella, would you mind? That would be great. We can go shopping together too. Charlie interrupts and goes, just make sure you don't go to Seattle. Alice says, oh, no, that's perfectly fine. I was gonna go to Olympia instead. And Charlie's on board with this plan and he's like, yeah, go have a very, very nice time with Alice. And this is making an excuse for where Bella will be on Saturday when everything is going to be happening and going on. Edward shows back up, he hangs out with them for a while, and when he leaves for the night, Alice goes with him. He also tells Bella that the meeting with the werewolves is in 1 hour. And Bella then has like her hand on her hip and is like, did you tell Alice to hold me hostage again this weekend? And Edward says, yeah, about that. I'm the one that's not going this weekend. Alice is going with all of them so they can hunt one last time. So it'll just be me and you at the house. At this meeting, only 3 wolves show up. And of course, it's the bestie squad. We got Jacob, we got Quill, and we got Embry. A lot happens here except Bella just kind of hangs out with Wolfie Jacob and has a nice time with him because this is the form she really likes him in because he's kind. And this is when she gets that effortless friendship feeling again with him. It is now the night where Bella is spending the night at the Cullen house with just Edward, and he carries her inside. He also says welcome home as he's carrying her inside, and that he has a little hand-me-down present for her. She goes with him upstairs so he can get the present, and it is a silver heart-shaped crystal. He tells her that it was actually his mother's. After Bella accepts his present, she goes, can we discuss something while we're being so open-minded with one another? I'm kind of impressed with how we were able to compromise, so I think I'd like to try it again. But this time on the topic of marriage and a negotiation. Edward says, I've already made the largest compromise by saying that I will take your soul. And Bella says, no, I'm just wanting to clarify a few things. Okay, sure, yeah. I want matrimony. And while we're thinking about it, since you'll be my wife and what's mine is yours and yours is mine, you will then have enough money for tuition and you can go to Dartmouth for a few semesters. Bella's like, deal breaker. Nope, that's not what I want. Edward's like, what about like 1 or 2 years? Just a little bit for you to get that human experience. And Bella's like, nope, move on. I don't like those terms. Keep on going. Her face is then turning bright red, kind of like my sweater right here. And she says, I'm a little worried about after. There's something I want to do before I'm not human. Edward says, tell me, and you can have it. And she responds with, you. You. He is not really catching the drift, so he's like, already yours. And so they start like kissing a bit. It's a bit more intense. My face is turning as red as Bella's probably was. Yeah. And he starts to kind of catch on, and so he pushes back and he's like, be reasonable, Bella, please be reasonable. And she's feeling kind of insecure right now and rejected. Edward's like, I have to say no because it's dangerous, not because I don't want you. Of course I do, you oversensitive, beautiful girl, of course I do. Bella says, getting married is a lot and I'm not giving in unless I get something. And Edward says, you will eventually. And Bella says, I won't be the same and I won't even know who I am. Tells her, you will be Bella and I could hurt you. He then reaches up to, it's kind of like a canopy bed, I think, and he grabs it and he shows her how easy it is to break it. Just like that. No effort required. Bella says, you don't want to hurt me so much that I don't think you could. So please, just try. We're back to some intense kissing. Emphasis on intense. It's like we're going camping. He then says one of my favorite lines to ever exist. He says, Bella, stop trying to take off your clothes. And her answer is, oh, I'm so sorry. Do you want to be the one to do that? He says, no, not tonight. I'm not saying no in general, but not now. I want to do this the right way. If I give in tonight, there's no guarantee that you won't go run off to Carlisle and have him change you. And Bella says, I think that's a bad idea. And I thought I was holding my own tonight, but somehow I walked in here and now I'm engaged, he interrupts. Unless, you know, you're going back on your word. Oh, no, I'm not, Bella says. Bella tells him, I said I would marry you. I'm not gonna back out on my word. We are here alone. We might as well. And Edward says, not tonight. I want to leave one rule unbroken. Also already has a ring for her, by the way. And this is the ring his father gave to his mother. It's a long oval ring, glittering round stones, and the band is gold. And what do you know, guys? It's a Cinderella moment because it's a perfect fit. He gets down on one knee and he says, Isabella Swan, I promise to love you forever. Every single day until forever. Will you marry me? Yes. Thank you. This is a little bit different from the scene in the movie, but I actually think that this might be one of the closer scenes from book to movie, in my opinion. The Cullens come home the next day and Alice is like, there is going to be a big snowstorm coming up, so Bella, please make sure you bring a jacket. Bella calls the reservation. Billy answers and he's like, Bella, don't stress one bit. It's going to be a-okay. I will be watching Charlie. Also tells Bella good luck and tell the Cullens good luck as well, which is probably the nicest thing Billy has ever said about the Cullens. Alice needs to talk to Bella because Alice is upset. Alice goes, don't you love me, Bella? Bella, I thought you loved me. Because for some reason, I am seeing you sneaking off to Vegas to get married without any of us being there. How could you do this to me? I might expect this from my brother, but from you? I thought we were sisters. Bella says, fine, you can come. Okay, perfect, but like, how much do you love me? Like, how much do you love me? Because please, 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 in the words of Sabrina Carpenter, let me plan your wedding. No, 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 no. And she's getting very overwhelmed and Edward's there and he just whispers in her ear, Vegas, it's okay. Vegas. Allison ignores him and is like, well, are you gonna show me the ring? And she reaches for it and there's no ring on her finger. And Alice is like, I thought I saw it in my vision. Am I wrong? Edward intervenes and saves Bella's behind and is like, she's just not really a fan of the flashy jewelry right now. It's a-okay. We have a big day ahead of us. Edward then takes Bella to the farthest side of the clearing and she's just walking around, touching everything, kind of going through her hair, pulling out random strands, dropping it everywhere. And then she falls on the ground to the point where she is now bleeding. And Edward is like, are you okay? Like, here, let me clean this up. And she's like, wait, wait, wait. We can use this. And so now she's like actually putting that everywhere, like all over the place. In the movie, I think she purposefully does this. I don't think she falls for an open wound. I think she like pricks her finger or something like that. But here she is a klutz. She's a clumsy, clumsy girl. And while this is going on, Edward says, you don't have to listen to Alice, by the way. If you want to go to Vegas, let's go to Vegas. If you want me to have Emmett go get a license, he can be the one to officiate it. Whatever you want, I don't care. I just want to marry you. Another thing I want to know is that Edward is not bothered by the fact that Bella is actively bleeding right now. He tells her that he lived 24 hours thinking that she was no longer alive, and that was the worst thing he's ever had to endure. Changed his whole perspective on things like that. And so now it just no longer affects him. They keep moving and then they eventually meet up with Jacob. Edward tells Jacob exactly where he needs to go and Edward's like, I'm going to take the long way. I will meet up with you in a few hours. Jacob and Bella are making small talk. Jacob brought a jacket because it's supposed to be cold, like snow on the mountain. Cold. In fact, Jacob tells her that this weather is making him so antsy because there are no animals in sight. He then asks like, what's up with the double bling? Why are you wearing 2 bracelets? And Bella's like, oh, like it was a grad gift. And Jacob responds with, great, a huge rock. Love, love. And this is when Bella realizes that like she's actually wearing a diamond. It's a huge diamond, like 5 carats. I don't know how she didn't realize that earlier, but she did now. Then Jacob does the stereotypical angsty teen boy line of, is he a better kisser than me? Bella responds, well, I don't know. Edward is the only person I've ever kissed. Or at least the only one that I consider that I've ever kissed. And Jacob's like, well, I apologized for that. My goodness. And Bella says, yeah, you apologized, but that doesn't mean that I forgot what happened. And Jacob says, well, it's irresponsible that you've only ever kissed one person in your life. You don't even know what else is out there. And you know what, Bella? If you were to ask me to kiss you, I would. He would not have any reason to get upset with you. Bella says, well, don't hold your breath. Actually, you know what? Yeah, hold your breath, please. Please do. And this is the moment where Bella tells Jacob that Edward is not going to fight and he's going to be staying with her. I can't believe he let you talk him out of going. I wouldn't miss this for anything. But Bella, that doesn't mean that he loves you more than I do. Remember that. Bella says, but you wouldn't stay, so just be careful. And then Jacob says, well, why does it matter if anything happens to me? Why do you care? And Bella says, because you're my best friend and I'm sorry I don't love you the way you want me to, but I do care about you. I don't want anything to happen to you. The storm is a brewing and Bella's like, you better hurry up so that you can also go home. And Jacob goes, oh, I'm not going home. And Bella looks at him and she goes, well, you're not camping with us, no. And Jacob goes, well, no, I'm not camping directly with you, but I will be staying until Seth gets there. Ella then kind of sees this as her opportunity to bring up the Wolfie drama and is like, why didn't you tell me that you're second in command? We learn the reason that Sam is the alpha is because he is the oldest. And that makes sense, but technically it's according to lineage, not age. And Bella goes, wait, but wasn't your great-great-grandfather the chief? And Jacob's like, yep. And Bella continues on saying, then shouldn't you be alpha according to lineage? And Jake says, that's Sam's job. Yes, he was supposed to be alpha. And yes, it was offered to him. And he said no. Make a mental note of this. Please and thank you. This is going to come up in Breaking Dawn. We now officially made it to the location where they will be camping. Guys, it's nighttime, it's cold, her teeth are chattering, and she can't sleep. And Edward is sitting as far away from her as he possibly can because if he gets any closer, she will just get colder. And he just feels so helpless, like, I can't do anything to help you, and all I want to do is just help you. And as Jacob said, he's not camping with them, but he's still basically there. And so they just hear him howling in the distance because all he can hear is Bella shivering to death. So the wolf is just howling, 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 and then eventually, in human form, he comes into the tent and says, you know what? She needs a space heater. And without even looking at Edward, Jacob starts to unzip the sleeping bag. And Edward literally grabs him and Jacob's like, don't touch me. And Edward's like, yeah, fine, just keep your hands off of her. Jacob just says, Bella, please just scoot over. Don't you like having 10 toes? And so he does get in the sleeping bag with her. She is warming up. And like a teenage boy, he goes, you know, if you want to warm up faster, we could lose a few articles of clothing. You could take off some clothes, I think is the actual line. And I know it's in the movie and it's so cringy yet funny. And Jacob is still looking at Bella and goes, don't worry about Edward. He's just jealous. And Edward says, of course I am. I can't do that. And Jacob is still pushing buttons and goes, Bella, your lips are blue. Do you want me to warm those up for you too? And Bella is just like, behave, please behave. And when she's a little warmer, she asks him a question that I literally never would have thought of. She asks him, hey, when you're in wolf form, how come you're like fluffier than everyone else? Like, why do you have so much more fur? And Jacob wasn't going to answer, but he knew that Edward would have. And so he was like, well, I just thought you preferred it that way. And Bella starts to drift off to sleep. And Jacob says the word, that's right, honey, go to sleep. Honey? Hello? We also hear Edward say, can you please try to control your thoughts? At least attempt to control them. And Jacob is just like, no, get out of my mind. And Edward's sitting there like, I would love nothing more than to get out of your mind. And it's silence. And then Edward went, yeah, I'm jealous of that too. Jacob tells him, she could change her mind, you know. To which Edward replies to, go to bed, you're getting on my nerves. They don't go to bed. Instead, Jacob says, this jealousy must be eating you alive. There's no way you can be that sure of yourself. Edward says, it's bad enough that I can barely control my voice when she's not with me, and it's even worse when she's with you and I can't see her. Jacob says, does it make it hard to concentrate when she's not with you? And Edward is being very truthful and honest, and he admits yes and no, but that's because I am able to have multiple things going on at once. That's how vampire minds work. But that does mean I'm always able to think where her mind's at, what she's doing, what's going on. And I do think she thinks of you, Jacob. I think she thinks of you more than I would like her to. I know that she's worried that you're unhappy. Jacob says, she's in love with me too, you know, even if she doesn't know it. Edward admits, I can't tell if you're right. Keeps pushing, saying, does that bother you? Again, yes and no. I just want her happy. And as odd as that sounds, I'm happy you're here. I have waited 100 years of my life for her. I wouldn't try to unalive you, that's for sure, if she picked you. Even if she changed her mind, I couldn't hurt her that way. Jacob then asks, how did you cope when you lost her? Edward says it was almost unbearable. I just thought if I could leave, one day she would forget about me. I was fighting it and I knew I was coming back eventually. Whether that was to be with her forever or to find her with someone else. I like to think that if I saw her happy, I would be able to leave again with a clear conscience and peace of mind. But if she wasn't happy, I would have stayed. And Jacob, that's why I'm staying here tonight, because sometimes she's reminded of me leaving. And it freaks her out anytime I leave a room. She won't ever bring up feeling this way, but I know what I did to her and I know how much it hurt her. And I will spend the rest of my existence trying to make it up to her. He also tells Jacob that from the moment he fell in love with her, he only had 4 options. 1, hopefully Bella would just not feel as strongly as Edward and he would just be able to move on with his life. 2, he would just stay with her throughout her human life, and when she passed, he would shortly pass after. 3, this is the one he chose. He would take himself out of the equation. He would raise her hand and hopefully push her in to option 1. And 4 is the one she wants, which is to be with me forever. For eternity. Jacob actually does admit to seeing how much Edward loves Bella. Jacob says, you should probably still work on option 1 though, because if you just would have given me 6 more months without you, and she would have been happy. I had a game plan going on. And then it all got messed up. I'm telling you, I really could have made her happy. We could have been a family. She could have been with Charlie and Renee, and we could have had kids. He says, can't you consider that I am better for her than you? And Edward says, yeah, I can consider it, but I'm not making the same mistake I made. I'm not leaving unless she tells me to go. And if she picked me, Jacob asked, then I would let her go. But just think about the fact that you might unintentionally let her go one day. You might, like Sam, Emily, and Leah. You could imprint on someone else, and I would be there in the wings, waiting. And before they end this conversation, Edward asks about the 3rd wife story. Edward's like, of course, I wish you would have told any other story. And Jacob's like, why? And Edward's like, really? You don't think that Bella would see herself as that character? And Jacob's just like, oh, you're right, I see your point. And Edward's like, okay, you need to get rest, sleep well. And then a few seconds pass and he goes, I didn't mean that so literally. Please just go to bed. Stop it with those thoughts. And Jacob says, sorry, but you could give us a little privacy. And Edward says, do you want me to help you sleep? Because I can help you sleep. It is now the next morning and Bella is literally sweating. Like sweating because of the heat that Jacob is putting off. And Jacob is out cold, so Bella's a little trapped, and so she's just looking at Edward like, please help me. And Edward comes over and he unzips the sleeping bag and he falls on the cold floor of the tent. And when he does this, his first reaction is to roll back to where he was. So he lands on top of Bella's body, crushing her. Just makes Edward lose his marbles. Bella says, that wasn't very nice of you, Edward. Please just apologize and say you're sorry. And Edward says, he was crushing you. Yeah, he was crushing me because you knocked him out of his sleeping bag like that. Jacob leaves to go get everything set up. Edward tells Bella that Alice has been telling Sam that everything will take place in about an hour. It's like a big old game of telephone right now, just so everyone's aware. Bella did try to get Jacob to stay because she doesn't want him to leave either, but Jacob's not missing this fight for anything. Bella's like, okay, so we stay together no matter what. And Edward's like, do you want me to distract you? Bella says, okay, can you just tell me your 10 best nights? No, because all the nights have been the best ever since I've met you. We also learned that last night, yes, she said Edward's name in her sleep, but she also said Jacob's name in her sleep, and she said my Jacob. My Jacob. Bella tells Edward, well, that's how I distinguish the 2 Jacobs. The one that I like, and then the one who's really not that nice. Bella tells Edward that her favorite night with him was when they were coming back from Italy. Edward admits that his best night was 2 nights ago when she finally agreed to marry him. And Bella's like, that's your favorite night? That's the one you choose? He's like confused by her answer and she goes, I just don't understand the importance of it because I'm staying with you forever no matter what. We already knew this. All of a sudden he asks her if she is warm enough and we realize that Jacob was listening and he just heard Edward say that the best night of his life was Bella saying yes to marry him. So now Jacob knows that they're engaged. engaged. And Bella is appalled and went, you knew he was listening. And Edward admits, yeah, I did. I never promised a fair fight. Edward is like a little concerned that she's like very, very mad at him. But Bella says, no, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at myself. I'm horrified at myself. I have to go find him. And Edward says, well, you can't go after him today. Not today. It's too dangerous. Bella is like losing her mind right now. Like she's having a panic attack being like, I should have told him. I don't know why I told him. This is not how he should have found out. This is all of my fault. Edward looks at her and goes, do you want me to bring him back so you can talk to him? And she just nods her head and says, yes, please. And this is when Bella has like an inner monologue of, oh my gosh, I'm in a love triangle. Who knew? I'm just like the girl in Wuthering Heights. I'm the one making a mess of everything. I'm just hurting everybody. Boys return and Edward says that there's a bit of a complication, so he's going to take Seth with him. And really this is just to let Bella know that she won't have an audience because he knows that she would not appreciate that. Once Edward and Seth are gone, she looks at Jacob and she goes, I am so sorry. Such a horrible, rotten, selfish person. It was so wrong to stay with you and wrong to be your friend and wrong to lead you on. I was so tired of hurting you. And Jacob says, you're not the only one capable of self-sacrifice. Guys, I know I've said this a lot in this video, but buckle up, strap in. This one's bumpy. Jacob says, I know how I will redeem myself. And this will make it convenient for everyone. You won't even have to choose. And Bella is pleading, being like, no, no, don't go. I won't let you. I'm begging. Don't do this. And Jacob says, what? So I can be your best man at your wedding? They exchange weird yelling I love yous. And Jacob's like, yeah, I know you love me. I know that you love me better than you know that you love me. You know what, Bella? If you could convince me that you really want me to come back, you could ask me and I would stay and I would not go self-sacrifice myself down there. There's some manipulation going on, some playing with emotions, but okay. Back to the story. So Bella says, fine, will you kiss me? Will you kiss me and will you come back? Like literally that's how I'm imagining her saying it, is like throwing her arms. And then they kiss. And she's starting it off just like it was last time where she's standing completely still. And he's like, you're overthinking it. You can do better than that. He literally says that, by the way. That's not me being dramatic. And so they keep going, they keep kissing, and all of a sudden she's getting into it. And this is the moment that Bella thinks to herself, oh my God, Jacob was right. He is more than just a friend and I am in love with him too. What? She also admits that it's not enough to change anything though. So they finish what Jacob says should have been their first kiss, and then he leaves and also decided that he's not going to self-sacrifice himself. Very convenient. She goes back to the tent having another existential crisis. She's laying face down in her sleeping bag. Edward says, don't feel guilty because he would have kissed you even if you hadn't fallen for it. And Bella's like, fallen for it? What do you mean? And Edward says, yeah, do you really think that he was that noble to go down there and self-sacrifice himself? That he would go out in a flame of glory? Yeah, Bella says, I did believe him. Why are you angry at me? Edward says, because you're human and you love him. And Bella says, well, I love you more. Edward says, I can be noble, but I'm not gonna make you choose. Just be happy and you can have whatever part of me that you want. And then he says, or you can have no part of me if that's what you want. And that makes Bella so angry. Like she's livid now. So Bella's like, I don't care that it's cold. I don't care that I smell like a dog. Please just make me forget about him. I just want every part of you. So please just fight. Fight for me. He tells her this isn't the right time. It's cold. You do stink like a dog. But we will try. I will make good on my promise. It's going to be fine. Guys, the fight has begun. The fight has started. So Emmett is having a great time. He's literally living his best life right now. And apparently all the newborns are talking about Bella and how she can't escape. And then all of a sudden, Edward realizes that Victoria is near and she's not alone. So this confirms Bella was correct and it's not the Volturi, it was Victoria. Two vampires come across the tent. It is Victoria and Riley. This is the first mention of him in this book. In the movie, you've already seen him a bunch, but this is the first time we're seeing him. Also, he is blonde in the book. Edward is talking to Riley and he goes, Riley, Victoria is lying to you. She does not love you. And she never has loved you. She loved someone named James. Victoria grimaces and stares directly at Bella. Edward continues on, he's still talking to Riley, being like, she wants you to not survive. She doesn't want to keep up this pretense anymore. You don't have to do this. You have a choice right now. Victoria is now speaking, going, Riley, he's lying. I told you, these Cullens, they play mind games. This is one of them. I do love you so much. Suddenly, a huge wolf comes up behind Riley and just tears into him. And Victoria didn't even glance at it, did not even care. She's just focused on Bella. Riley's still moving, him and Seth are fighting. Edward and Victoria are kind of fighting, but they look like they're dancing because Edward is able to anticipate every single one of her moves because he can read her mind, and she's just quick and speedy. Riley is looking rough right now, let me tell ya. Victoria starts weaving through the trees, and Edward's like, you won't get another chance like this, taunting her. This is another difference from the movie. In the movie, Edward is taunting her by being like, that's how I got rid of James, torn him to shreds, like literally describing everything that went on. But here he's saying, James never loved you. You were a convenience to him. You could always escape. He never loved you. And now she's raging. The wolf won't turn on us, Victoria. You're the reason they're our allies. Bella compared Victoria and Edward's fight to the one that she saw between Alice and Jasper. So fast, she really couldn't see what was going on at all. Mind you, while all this taunting is going on between Edward and Victoria, Riley and Seth are still actively fighting. And Riley ends up getting the upper hand and throwing Seth against this rock wall behind Bella, and all these rocks start tumbling down. Make a mental note of these rocks that are now on the ground. Anywho, Seth is like limping his way back. He's in between Bella and Riley at this point, and Bella is like, oh no, oh no, 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 no. He's about to finish off Seth. Like, Seth is done for. What can I do? And in this very moment, Bella is reminded of the story of the third wife. And since there are all these sharp rocks by Bella, she picks up one of them and she places it right by the scar that she got on her 18th birthday when she was thrown across the room because of the paper cut, yada, yada, yada. She puts the rock there, she starts to bleed, and everyone stops as soon as they hear Bella gasp. Victoria is now distracted, and her and Edward have stopped fighting. And then all of a sudden, Edward comes up to Riley, grabs him, has him on the ground, but Bella can't see what's happening because Seth is blocking her so she won't have to, but she can hear everything. Victoria's still on the scene, and her and Edward are about to start fighting yet again. Riley's arm from a while ago, like he lost in the beginning of this fight to Seth, is crawling towards Riley's body, and at this moment Seth is like, and so Seth goes for the other arm. Riley starts screaming, being like, oh no, like help me, help me, help me, Victoria. And Victoria's like, really couldn't care less. You're on your own, kid. Nope, not helping you. On was Riley. Let me move him to our deceased pile. We barely knew you, Riley. We knew him more in the movie, though. Rest in pieces. Rest in pieces. This moment, when Victoria realized that she was on her own, she was about to make a run for it. But Edward, on the other hand, was like, why don't you stay for a while? And he is so speedy that she did not have a chance of escaping. When Edward got up to her, suddenly Victoria was on the ground. This is a very intense moment between Edward and Victoria, obviously, because only one can survive and only one can win within this little battle here. But Bella literally was looking at it and was like, this does not seem like a fight. It almost seems like a romantic moment, like a kissing moment between the two of them. But instead, it's this heated fight where Victoria ends up losing, and she is now deceased. So let me add her right by Riley and her mate, James. After this, they grab every single piece they can find. They light them up. They light them on fire. And Bella is literally frozen in place, and she still has the rock in her hand because that was a lot. She's also never seen Edward in this form. Like, he was full attack mode, vicious, never seen him like this before. And Edward's like, I won't hurt you. I promise I won't hurt you. Aren't you afraid of me? And Bella just questions, why? Why? Are you okay? Did she end up hurting you? And Edward shakes his head saying, no, I'm absolutely fine. And Seth is good too. Seth is actually quite pleased with himself. We also learn that the Cullens in the clearing are doing well too. Bella's a little out of her shock state, and so she looks at Edward and she's like, why did you think I was afraid of you? Like, why? I've never been afraid of you. And Edward says, you've never seen me like that. You literally just saw me dismember something. You're fine? This is also where Edward tells her that little third wife act that you did wasn't necessary at all. I know you were worried for Seth, but Seth was faking it. And Bella's like, he was faking? And Edward's just like, you didn't have to do that one bit. But that's okay, that's okay. You live and you learn. Edward then turns really serious and he looks at Bella and he's like, okay, we don't have a lot of time, and please, 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 please trust me and don't panic, because again, we don't have a lot of time. We then see Seth, who looks like he's in intense pain for some reason, and as soon as we're seeing Seth like this, Edward drops to his knees in the same manner, like something is wrong right now. And we see Edward and he's like, we're fine, tell Sam to help him, we're fine. We then hear Edward say, Sam, help him. Sam, help him. And in this moment, Bella is like, what? Wait, what is going on? Edward is then able to stand and he's like, the wolves have got to go. They need to go back home. The Volturi are on their way. Seth, you gotta go. There was a little incident in the clearing with Leah, and Bella just says, oh my God, is Leah okay? And Edward is giving her this really strange look, and all of a sudden it clicks in Bella's mind, oh my God. Edward said, Sam, help him. It's not Leah who ended up hurt. And before Bella even has a chance to figure out what happened, Edward has now picked her up and they are sprinting. And Edward tells her, we have to get there first. We have to beat the Volturi. Jane is with them and I don't want her to catch our scent and come for us without the rest of my family. It's safer if we're all together. Now Edward starts to explain what happened. He says that Leah got a little cocky when she saw a newborn all by itself and she was taking her sweet time, and newborns are unpredictable, and so the newborn got a leg up on her and Jacob pushed her out of the way. And Jacob was the one who got hurt. And by hurt, I mean most of the bones on the right half of his body are now shattered. Like, hurt. When Bella hears of this, because there's a lot of things going on, the Volturi are coming, she's afraid of them. Jacob, half his bones are broken, so she's scared for him. She has a lot of emotion. She just watched 2 vampires basically become nothing. And it's a lot for anyone to comprehend, especially a human. So she passes out. She is now passed out. We're in the clearing. Bella is still unconscious. Alice is standing over Bella saying, well, she's been out for 5 minutes, but in 37 seconds, she's gonna open her eyes and I'm pretty sure she can hear all of us now. Wakes up every single person there, assures her that Jacob is going to be okay. Carlisle specifically says, I checked him myself. He is going to be all right. And I did have to tell the rest of the pack to get Jacob to turn back into a human because I'm not a veterinarian. I can only treat humans. But he is going to be okay. Remember, werewolves heal very, very fast. We saw this earlier in the book. And Bella is looking around her and she sees this really young girl, probably about 15. Also notices that Jasper is there and he's rubbing his arm because he got bit. Being bit by a vampire when you're a vampire doesn't really do anything to you except the venom stings and it hurts. Back to the young girl, and the young girl is struggling. She's like, how can you stand this? How are you able to do this? She smells so good. Why? How can you control yourselves? Like she's losing her marbles. And the girl is honed in on Bella too, and Bella's looking at Edward like, should we go? Should we move? And Edward says, if the Volturi weren't on their way, yes, but we can't move now. We can't. We have to stay. They all line up in a bit of a formation and they put Bella in the middle, basically in the heart of their family, which would be the safest space for her. Jane is, of course, with them. Creepy, creepy Jane. Oh, also, let me make a note here. If y'all have seen the movie, y'all are probably thinking to yourself, how is this the first time that we're seeing the Volturi in the book? Like, that's crazy. That's because in the movie, there is a scene where the Volturi are watching over the newborns in Seattle. Does not exist in the book. Not at all. Again, I mentioned this a bajillion times. This movie is so different from the book. So different. And it makes sense to me because this book is over 600 pages. Like, there's no way they could have included all of this. But the fact that they added extra things just really cracks me up. It really does. But anyway, as I said, creepy, creepy Jane. She's there, of course. And Jane looks at this newborn and goes, huh, looks like you missed one. Edward just says, she surrendered. Carlisle gave her that option. And Jane looks at all of them and goes, there are no options for those who break the rules. Carlisle speaks up and goes, I saw no reason to destroy her. She did not know of the rules. She had never been taught. Jane goes, irrelevant. Also, Carlisle, Arrow sends his regards. Carlisle nods and goes, send him mine. Jane then asks how many were there. The Cullens respond with 18, brand new and unskilled. Then speaks up and goes, Victoria was the creator. Was the creator? Edward says, I dealt with her. Her and another vampire. Jane looks at the girl and she asks the girl for her name, but Jane does not actually give her time to answer before she does her pain. And this poor girl is now withering on the ground in pain. Edward looks away from Jane and goes, her name is Bree. So that means this 15-year-old girl right here, her name is Bree. And y'all, we will get to know Bree so much in the next Twilight video. Don't you fret, don't you fret. I feel like her novella is very, very underrated, personally. Edward also says, you don't have to do that to her. She will tell you everything. And Jane goes, I know. And Bree is like spilling it all now. She's like, there are 19 or 20 of us. Riley never told us her name. He didn't want us to be able to think about her in any way, shape, or form. Riley just told us that we had to destroy the ones with yellow eyes. Bree also confirms that Riley gave all the newborns Bella's scent. So the reason Bree was losing her mind when she saw Bella isn't just because she was human. It's because she's been trained like a bloodhound for Bella. Bree is still talking and she says, Riley promised you would come back for us and he left us. He broke his promise. And the Cullens told me they wouldn't hurt me if I stopped fighting. They said they would help. And Jane just looks at her and goes, oh, but that wasn't his gift to offer. Edward then steps in and goes, Victoria had a grudge against Bella. And this makes Jane laugh and goes, everyone has such strong feelings towards Bella. We see Jane staring very intensely at Bella. Edward, still not looking at Jane, looking towards the ground, is like, can you please not do that? Which means Jane is trying to use her powers on Bella, but is still failing. Jane then summons Felix. Here is Felix. Summons him over to Bree. And the Cullens are like, we will take responsibility for Bree. We will do it. Jane says, we don't make exceptions. And we don't give out second chances. You know, Caius will be so interested to see that Bella is still human. And Alice speaks up and goes, a date is set. Perhaps we'll come see you next time. Edward then whispers in Bella's ear and says, don't watch, look away. And then we hear Felix handling Bree. Some may say she had a short second life. Some may say that. There you go, Bree Tanner. Talk about you soon. And as soon as they handle Bree, the Volturi walk off into the mist. And they're gone. Different time, no longer in the clearing. Bella is with Alice and Bella's like, I want to go to La Push and I want to see Jacob right now. And Alice is like, well, honestly, he's probably unconscious right now because of the amount of morphine that they've given him. So really, there'd be nothing for you to do. Just sit and stare. And if you want to do something helpful, you need to go home to Charlie and confirm the alibi that we went shopping today. Here, take this. And Bella's like, what is this? Well, Alice is like, we said we went shopping, so I went shopping. Bella then pauses, looks at Alice and says, am I going to be just like Bree? Alice responds with, everyone is different, but maybe, to some extent. But don't worry, Bella, because it passes after a couple of years. But also, Bella, I've never seen someone choose this life. It could be different for you. Bella then asks a question that we're already aware of. We're already aware of this because I answered this in the first video because I knew we would all be confused. But she asks it anyway. She goes, how come certain powers don't work on me? And then how come some do? Like, why can you and Jasper use your powers on me? And that is because Alice and Jasper's powers do not use Bella's mind. Everyone else's does. Jasper's is affecting the body physically. And Alice sees visions of outcomes, not the reasonings behind them, so that makes Alice's powers outside of the mind. Bella also looks at her and goes, you can still see me as a vampire, right? Yes, I can. And I can sympathize with you too, because you have two very good things that are hard to choose between. Bella goes home, she talks to Charlie. Charlie is like, oh my goodness, Bella, Jacob got in a motorcycle accident and he's not looking too good. I saw him when he came in. It was not looking too good and he sounded horrible. Because remember, Charlie spent the day with Billy. Charlie also said that Billy was so distracted all day and it almost seemed like Billy knew this was going to happen to Jacob. Billy was very superstitious and kind of on edge, thinking something bad was going to happen. And then earlier they were on a boat. They heard wolves howling and Billy immediately started going for the shoreline. But I guess Billy was in a rush not to miss the game. But Bella, one good thing that came out today is Billy was actually grateful for Carlisle and was so nice. I think he's coming around to the Cullens. So Bella, Edward was there and Edward was so kind. It was almost like he was looking at his own brother when he was looking at Jacob. And he is a decent guy. I'll try to remember that, Bella. Charlie says one final thing before you go to La Push. I need you to promise me something. Will you please tell me before you do anything major in your life? You know, before you run off with him or something? I want to be in the loop. And she goes, of course I will. Bella then goes to La Push. Billy welcomes her and says that Jacob is now awake. Also, Jacob can't feel his injuries, so that is a plus. And Jacob looks at her and he goes, how are you? I've been worried. Was he mean to you? Bella's like, huh? Of course he wasn't mean to me. It was fine. He wasn't even mad. He just wants me to be happy. And Jacob's like, well, shoot, he didn't even give you an ultimatum or something? I was really counting on that reaction from him. Bella says, he's not playing any games, Jacob. Jacob goes, yes, he is. He's just a better manipulator than I am. And Bella, when are you gonna wake up and realize he's not perfect? Bella says, well, at least he didn't threaten to hurt himself to make me kiss him. And Jake says, well, I did do that. Yep, that I did do. But I knew you would forgive me, Bella. He also says, it's better that you know now. Now I don't have to wonder or question anything down the line. I don't have to be thinking of all these what ifs. And by know, he means now that she knows that she is actually in love with him. Jacob continues on and says, I will be your friend. I won't ask for anything more. I will be your friend. And you know what? Maybe we can even be long distance friends. Jacob then brings up King Solomon, and from that, his segue is, I'm no longer going to cut you in half, Bella. Jacob says, you know what the worst part is? Knowing what would have been. Bella goes, might. What might have been. Oh, no, Bella. Would. I am exactly right for you. Basically, in the human world, he would have been her soulmate. He would have made her happy. She would have been able to stay in Forks, be with Charlie, be with Renee, and have kids. A completely different life than the one that she will have with Edward. Jacob says, I would be healthier for you. I would be the heir. I would be the sun. And Bella says, I used to think that you were my personal sun, balancing out all the clouds. And now we have an iconic line from Jacob. Clouds I can handle, but I can't fight without an eclipse. Bella tells him that the worst part for her is that she saw her whole life with him. It's a life that she wants. She wants all of it. She wants to be able to love him and make him happy. But it's like Sam and Emily. She doesn't have a choice. She always knew that she was never going to change her mind, and that is why she kept fighting against him. It's always Edward. So you're getting married then, Jacob says. It's not my idea, and it means a lot to him. He asks, how long do you have left? Honestly, depends on how long Alice can put a wedding together. Bella, are you scared? Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the pain, and I don't like seeing Edward in pain either. And also dealing with Charlie and Renee, and the fact that I won't be me and I won't be able to control myself soon. That is freaking me out a bit. Jacob tells her that he will always be waiting in the wing for her. He'll always be that spare option if she needs it. Bella looks at him and says, I wonder when it will happen for you. When the right girl is going to catch your eye? Basically like, is he going to imprint? And Jacob laughs and goes, don't get your hopes up, though it would be a relief. And this conversation takes a crazy turn because Bella goes, I wonder how jealous I'll be of her. And the reason that this takes a crazy turn is because of the events in the next book. If you haven't read it, haven't seen it, don't know what I'm talking about, hold tight, because her saying how jealous she's gonna be of the girl that he ends up with, crazy. Crazy! But anywho, moving forward, Bella tells him that she does love him. He says, I love you more, and she leaves him. She gets to her truck. She doesn't drive too far. She drives over the boundary line specifically so she knows that Alice will see her. And then she pulls over to the shoulder and she just breaks down and cries. Since Alice can see her, Alice gets Edward to go to Bella. He gets in the car and he just holds her. And in her head, she says this is worse because those were not the arms she was craving in that moment. And then that feeling put a whole different side of guilt on top of her. Like, girly is going through it. Edward does end up taking her home. She tells him, hey, I'll meet you upstairs. Charlie sees her and she's not okay. And Charlie gets antsy when she is very emotional because of the events that happened in the previous book. And Bella's like, I'm okay, I just had to have a really tough discussion with Jacob. And Charlie goes, now? You couldn't have waited till he recovered? And she just shakes her head and she goes upstairs. She tries to take off the bracelet that Jacob gave her and Edward's like, no, keep it on. It's a part of you. And as I said, Charlie is very anxious, and so every so often he does come and check on Bella because he doesn't want a repeat of what happened in New Moon. Here's the part of the story I told y'all to put a pin in probably an hour ago when we were talking about the magnets. Some of y'all were probably thinking, oh, the magnets obviously were Edward and Jacob, Team Edward, Team Jacob, they'll never get along, polar opposites. No. Incorrect, incorrect. Bella is thinking to herself, oh my goodness, these magnets are me. These magnets are Edward's Bella and Jacob's Bella. They can never coexist at the same time. I'm going to take a commentator note and talk about something right now because this is something in the book that kind of changes my opinion on the whole series, and it always has. Like, even when I was younger and I read this book, because the movies don't do this. Like, when you watch the movies, there really is a clear winner and it's always Edward, but poor Bella, and in the book it is always Edward too, obviously, but Bella really is struggling and going through the motions because while she was essentially grieving Edward in New Moon, Jacob was there for her the whole time. And that's a part of herself kind of changed and became something different than the part that she was with Edward. And I don't think the movies show that. I don't think the movies show that like Bella was actually in love with Jacob. Not like, love you like a brother, love you like a friend. Like, she actually was in love. At least that's how the book is presenting all of this. Whether that was due to manipulation or not, who's to say, who's to say. She did have strong feelings for him. And it hurt. Her having to process the fact of, I need to let you go for both of our sakes, hurts. And we don't see that in the films. And I think that that is a really important piece that they left out. Okay, I'm getting off my soapbox now. How do y'all feel about that? Let me know your thoughts on that down below. In the morning, Edward looks at Bella and very honestly says, are you sure you made the right decision? Because she is not okay, like at all. And Bella says, yes. Edward goes, if it hurts you this bad, how is this the right decision? Bella goes, I know who I can't live without. And I can't be self-sacrificing. Edward, I have to be with you. I have to. It's the only way for me to live. And again, she is feeling so guilty. Thinking I shouldn't have had Edward be here with me. I feel so bad for having him witness how I was feeling last night. Because that was a lot. She then asks Edward to hand her book, and she opens up to a page and she reads, if all else perished and he remained, I should still continue to be. And if all else remained and he were annihilated, the universe would turn to a mighty stranger. Bella looks at him and goes, I know what that means, and I know what I can't live without. And with that, they are now going to see Alice. We have a little wedding update. Alice already has a dress. Yes, she had a dress custom made a while ago. Already banking on the fact that they were getting married. And also the dress is stunning. It has vintage lace and she holds it up to her and Bella's like, is this kind of giving like 1918 vibes? And Alice is like, yes, it is. But some of it is my design. And 1918? That has to do with Edward. It does. I believe that's the year he was turned, actually. Bella then looks at Alice and is like, well, you showed me my dress. Are you going to show me yours? I know that you already bought one. I mean, my maid of honor would not be slacking like this. As soon as Bella says this, Alice is like, oh my gosh. And she goes into full wedding planner mode. Like, I gotta get Esme and Rosalie up here now. Bella leaves the room. Edward says, let's go to the meadow. This is the first time in the book that we have gone to the meadow, whereas in the movie, I think you're in the meadow in like the second scene. We learn that Bella and Edward will be getting married August 13th. This gives her about a month before she turns 19 because she does not want to be another year older than Edward. Bella explains to Edward, the reason I'm giving Alice full reign, she can plan our wedding, is because it wouldn't be fair to Charlie to leave him out of this. And also, it's making Alice happy, Esme happy, everyone is content. Edward's staring at her for a little bit and he goes, okay, deal's off, calling it off right now. And I will keep my side, but you are off the hook. We do not have to get married. Bella, you are trying to make everyone else happy. And frankly, I don't care about anyone else. We can do it today if you want. The sooner the better. Let's get this done. You're about to be a vampire. Oh, and don't worry, I haven't forgotten the other part of this little arrangement / deal that we made. Then he starts kissing her and it's a bit intense. Things start to progress and like Bella's like kind of losing her mind a little bit. And then she's like, no. We're not doing this right now. No. Pauses and he's like, why? What's changed? I love you. Let's do this now. Bella gets a little distracted again in the moment and then she's like, wait. Bella says, this is important to me and I'm going to do it right. And Edward questions whose definition of right? Mine. And it's gonna be responsible. I'm not gonna be denying Alice of her fun. I'm not gonna be denying Charlie the chance to walk me down the aisle. And I need to give Charlie and Renee the best I can give them before I'm gone. And also, I want to tie myself to you in every way humanly possible before I'm a vampire. If I change my mind, you will be the first to know. And now, Edward, it is time to do something unpleasant and probably a little dangerous. I'm gonna need my ring. We need to tell Charlie. He slips the ring on her finger where it will be for the rest of eternity. And that is the end of Eclipse, but of course there's an epilogue. But the epilogue? POV change. We're in Jacob's POV. Leah is here. She's being very impatient because Jacob wants space. Leah's like, I'm not giving you space. You don't understand how hard this is for me. And Jacob looks at her and is like, you are the most selfish person I have ever met. Jacob, look at it from my perspective. I don't even like Bella Swan, and yet I'm having to see her through your eyes. I'm having to have every single one of your thoughts and your dreams, and I'm over it. She's going to marry that thing, and you need to move on. But you know what? Maybe a funeral would be better closure for you than a wedding. Jacob snaps and goes, how do you think the rest of us feel having to see Sam through your eyes? It's bad enough Emily has to deal with your fixation. She doesn't need the rest of us panting too. Leah then spits in his direction. Jacob is so mad, so upset. He's also just worried for Bella in general because who knows what's going to end up happening to her. She's probably not gonna be the same person, but also she might not survive the transformation. He goes home and Billy says, hey, we got mail. And it is a wedding invitation with a letter. It's from Edward. It is from Edward. Edward says, I'm breaking the rules by sending this to you. She was afraid to hurt you more by inviting you to the wedding, but I know if things went a different way, I would want the option and I would want the choice. I will take care of her. Thank you for her. Thank you for everything. Edward. Jacob is now losing his mind. He runs out of the house, becomes a wolf. Quill and Embry are like, slow down, man. We're coming. Wait up for us. And Sam, because they're all talking through their minds, by the way. And Sam is like, no. Leave him. Let him be. He's okay. And Jacob just contemplates going as far as he possibly can. Because maybe if he ran far enough away from home, maybe he wouldn't have to hear it again. And that is the official end of Eclipse. Guys, I feel like we did so good. I feel like we did. We were in this together. This was a journey. It was a journey. And we did it. I really don't know how I feel about this one. I've always been kind of 50-50 on Eclipse because I really like Edward in Eclipse, but I just don't really vibe with Jacob in Eclipse. And the whole book is just the two of them. So it's 50-50 for me. Next video in the series that y'all will have will all be about Bree Tanner. And her story is so good and it's so underrated. And then after that, we'll be rolling into Breaking Dawn. I'm debating whether I want it to be in part 1 or part 2. If I split it into 2 parts, you will get it sooner. If y'all have any preferences, let me know down below. If you made it to the end of this video, tell me your favorite character from this book. Not of the series, just of this book specifically. Okay, thank y'all for watching. I really appreciate it. Y'all are the best community in the world and I will see y'all so soon. Love y'all.